My name is Vijay Kirkar, and I am currently associated with Pune International Center, and I want to really thank you all. But the mischief is really Sunil's and Jyotika's mischief. That's why we're here. And it is really inspired by their work and their commitment. So the purpose of this roundtable is that what we want to do in Pune International Center as a this is an institution which is we're trying to make it an independent think tank, and certainly this is the only think tank that is I know in India which is completely financed by the members themselves. About 500 professionals came together, paid some institutions like IIM Ahmedabad, IIT, Pune University, Mumbai School of Economics. They paid, and then some corporates also became members, no donation. So this is financed by the members themselves, who allow us to create a liberal space in the city which has some heritage in that area. So we can help to continue that heritage. And after working for a few years, Government of Maharashtra was also found that this is useful to support. So they gave us a beautiful 7 acres of land on lease. So now we're constructing a campus which will, if I may say so, may turn out to be better than even IIC. So we have a nice forest, we're going to create forests ourselves in the 7 acre, and they're very nice. What IIC doesn't have, we're going to provide is a live stream of water. So the stream going through the campus. So it will be a beautiful ashram-like also a condition we want to create where the people come and reflect, write hopefully books, good books. But we're not going to have like IIC, any hostel, because that's a different skill and different requirement. Once you run a hostel is very different. So it will be, a few courses will be there for, suppose tomorrow Sumit wants to come and spend a few months to write his book, which I'm persuading him to write actually. He has written and then so forth. So but they can come here, spend 3 months with us and stay there, and we have all the facilities there. We'll have we're going to create hopefully one of the best libraries in India also. But that's sort of our hope and dream. But so one of the areas we want to work on as a research area was multi-level governance. For a number of reasons. One of course, we're fortunate to have a Professor Pete with us as our distinguished fellow of PIC. As you know, he has been passionately working in the areas of urban reforms. And thanks to Sumit, I got involved in the multi-level governance. Because till then I only was involved with central government. I really didn't know other institutions, but he really taught me in Finance Commission, and I got interested in multi-level governance. So that's one purpose. So we're going to have 2 different roundtables. One is going to hopefully go around rural, like Gram Panchayat, the 3rd tier, that part of it. Another is the next one will be urban and metro regions. And then, when we try to good things happen, Sunil Kumar came in our institutional life, and he agreed to sort of help us on this. So he has prepared a conceptual paper, which I'm going to invite him to speak. And then, if Professor Ajit Dalde comes in between, he can also speak, but we can continue. And Abhay, you want to add anything at this stage? Okay. Our Sutradhar wants me to first request each and one of you to introduce ourselves just for the record. Pradeep, you want to start?
I'm Pradeep.
I'm Sumit Bose. I retired 10 years ago, currently involved with a few not-for-profits, and I'm on some corporate boards as independent director.
I'm Abhay Pethe. I spent my entire career in Mumbai, being director of Mumbai School of Economics. Now I'm with PIC and also, of course, with Gokhale Institute as an advisor.
मैं चंद्रशेखर प्राण, वैसे उत्तर प्रदेश से हूँ, प्रयागराज इलाहाबाद से। पहले सरकार में काम करता था, भारत सरकार में युवा मंत्रालय में था, और अब इस समय पंचायतों के साथ और नगर पालिकाओं में थर्ड गवर्नमेंट कैंपेन करके उस काम को।
Good morning. Thank you. I'm Joy Ilaman. I'm presently the Director General of Kerala Institute of Local Administration, KILA. Basically, capacity development for local governments, both urban and rural.
Convener of Mumbai Mobility Forum and Mumbai Environmental Social Network. We are interested in traffic management, public transportation and property tax as the primary civil issues.
Hey, good morning. I'm Anish. I work with Transform Rural India Foundation. Our work is in Eastern Central India, largely concentrated there. And the intent is to build a flourishing rural. And Panchayat happens to be an essential part of our work.
Good morning, everyone. I am Abhay Vaidya, Director, Pune International Center. I have a background in journalism and I worked in the mainstream media for 35 years. Thank you.
Good morning everyone. I'm Abhay Shingare. I'm currently pursuing my PhD from Gokhale Institute and I'm working on inequality spreading due to wage differentials across the districts of Maharashtra.
Good morning all, this is Shardul Manurkar. Currently I am working at the Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics and I have background in urban. I did my masters in urban policy and governance from Tata Institute and then worked as a legislative researcher with few politicians.
Morning, my name is Raghunandan. I used to be in the Ministry of Panchayati Raj in Government of India. Subsequently, I used to be in the IAS. I quit. I became an international consultant. I worked on democratic decentralization in the entire South Asian region from Afghanistan all the way to East Timor. I was a consultant to the 14th and the 15th Finance Commissions through Center for Policy Research. I've done a lot of independent work on fiscal decentralization. I teach in Switzerland and currently I also do stand-up comedy on governance issues.
Hi, I'm Anand Iyer from Janagraha. So both me and Janagraha have been in the urban development space. Janagraha is a systems change organization. I have been on the infrastructure and services side and architect by qualification. Work for the central government as well as state. So National Institute of or Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and Gujarat Urban Development, etc.
I'm Jyotika Patankar, retired from the IAS. I'm Sunil's cadre mate from UP and I'm currently now in Pune and member of the PIC.
I'm Sunil Kumar. I belong to UP cadre, retired recently from Government of India, Secretary Ministry of Panchayati Raj. And now I'm also a member of PIC.
So I think we can now request Sunil to make a presentation. Oh, you already introduced yourself. Come. Can you use this mic?
So I'm Manasi Pendharkar. I'm a research intern at Pune International Center. I've done bachelor's in economics from Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics. Thank you.
Thank you.
As Dr. Kelkar has very kindly mentioned, this topic came up for discussion about 3 months back, and then we worked together, and it has taken this form today. But basically, it's only to sort of spur people to begin to think on a very important issue, because having spent 4 years in Ministry of Panchayati Raj, which at one point of time one understands in early 2019, it was on the verge of being wound up by government. So, but somehow it survived that phase. And today we are here, and we feel that this is a neglected area, both at the center as well as at the state level. And it needs to be looked at more seriously, and there should be more voices which should be speaking up for local government. If the democratic traditions, democratic sort of norms, values are to take deep roots. So it is in this background that we have sort of prepared this. This is just the context. I will not go into that. When he was in the ministry, that laid the foundation for whatever we see on the ground today. But one important thing is this Keshwanand Bharti judgment, which came 50 years back on 24th April, which defined the basic structure of Indian Constitution. Their democracy and federalism was also noted as being part of the basic structure. Now this debate after 73rd and 74th Amendment, that is almost 20 years after this judgment came, now that these are there part of the Constitution, can it be said that in the light of this, even local government is now a part of the basic structure of the Constitution? You cannot wish it away. This is something which can sort of spur thinking. It has not yet been challenged, but in a lot of judgments of high courts and Supreme Courts in recent times, the courts have seriously taken when it came to elections, non-holding of elections, and they virtually sort of forced state governments to conduct elections in some cases where, but it's a work in progress. So what I am suggesting here is that can local government in the current scenario after 30 years of its working be seen as a part of basic structure of the Constitution? Because the moment you do that, then whole lot of other things will begin to fall in place. Now, as mentioned, yes, multi-level governance structure, it has now taken roots. Apart from center state, you have both in rural areas and urban areas, we have the local governments in place. Even sir, till recently, CAG, they, although in their mandate it was there that they would also undertake audit of local bodies, but it was not really put, that division was never existent, and they used to look upon it as self-government bodies, local government bodies. Now they are saying, no, this is local government, and just by using that word local government, it has a different connotation in the minds of everyone, the stakeholders themselves and citizens too. So that I think has been done, but all of us know that it is a state subject. In all states we have the Panchayati Raj Acts and rules. I'll be focusing on rural local governments in today's year. And in a study of these PR Acts and rules reveals, that is my understanding, that there are several loose ends which need to be tied up, which have not been addressed. Say relationship between elected representatives and the bureaucracy. Not only the bureaucracy which is working in the local governments, but also the district level administration, the department officials. What should be the relationship of these vis-a-vis them? Rule and policy making powers of Gram Sabha. Of course, they don't have legislative powers, they don't have but for rules, because say in Maharashtra we came across a news item, the Panchayat decided between 6 to 8 p.m. no one will use a mobile during that, because it was affecting the studies of children. And if anyone was found to be doing that, they would be penalized. So in a way, it is a rule-making sort of power which the Panchayat or the Gram Sabha. So how do we recognize that? Do we recognize that, or is it just reduced to selection of beneficiaries for different centrally sponsored schemes? So if we are looking at institutions of Gram Sabha as an arena where direct democracy can take shape, and then we'll need to rethink the whole architecture, because now the Gram Panchayats, they have also grown in size, they have also grown in numbers. If 500 people were to attend, is there any sort of system in place where even civilized discussion can take place? Or it's going to be a sort of chaotic scenario all over? There is nothing on record in any government sort of acts, rules as to how these are to be conducted, how it will be organized, from where will the expenses be met. And all these are things, issues that we'll need to address if we want to sort of make it a reality, if not today, at least in the 10, 15 years down the line. Administrative and financial viability, the size of panchayats, In Telangana, the new government 5 years back, it came and it doubled the number of panchayats. From about 8,000, it went up to 16,000. And why? Because it was a political decision which the government had taken. The moment we come, we'll make, and then for the next 10-15 years, they will not have panchayat bhavans, they will not have panchayat secretaries, they will be putting up memorandum to Central Finance Commission, State Finance Commission, give us funds for this, give us funds for that. So it is time to address these issues squarely, upfront, weigh the pros and cons, and periodic delimitation on basis of transparent and objective criteria. Is it time? Otherwise, right now, just before elections, the minister will call the departmental secretary and say, we want so many new panchayats to come up. Or in Uttar Pradesh, you have one panchayat which has a population of more than 1 lakh today. And it continues to be a panchayat because the local people there in that district, they are averse to it becoming a nagar panchayat or a municipality. So all these issues need to be sort of discussed and then identified and then solutions found. So these are design issues. The relationship between gram panchayat, block panchayat, district panchayat, again very sort of nebulous. It has not been really defined properly. What should be the relationship? So these need to be looked at. All these are transfer of fund functions, functionaries. It is in a work in progress. Sumit Bose committee set up by Ministry of RD. It gave its recommendations 8 or 10 years back. It still remains on paper. Then we have to focus on different models of service delivery to citizens, say drinking water supply, solid and liquid waste management. Is there a potential where government is spending lakhs of crores on this? Is there a potential to create jobs in service sector? And the service providers, they conform to certain service level benchmarks. So here, in the Ministry of Panchayati Raj, they came up with service level benchmarks for drinking water supply and sanitation, solid and liquid waste management. They even brought out certain model contract documents. What should be the contract which will be signed between the panchayat and the service providers? And then you have to work out all the mechanisms. There should be a payment mechanism in place. The moment you do this, your payment will be made. It will not be stuck for years on end, because otherwise no one will come. So in some panchayats, if someone can make a sort of success of it, that can work as a role model. But going ahead 10 years down the line or 20 years down the line, there is no other way in which local government can provide service delivery of a reasonable quality to citizens. So this is something on which we'll need to look at, because the departmental way of looking at things, if you have to do something, create a new department or a new ministry, or you recruit people on government roles who will do this. That, I think, it has run its course. Whatever we could achieve through that, that has been achieved, but now we have to look at different models. And if jobs can be created in the process, if there can be more competition, that would be sort of, and it should not be confined only to urban areas. Even in rural areas, the quality of service delivery, there should be absolutely no sort of, so these are certain things where a lot of thinking and discussion needs to happen. Decentralized clean energy supply arrangements. And recently in the Congress manifesto, they have come out very explicitly that decentralized supply of electricity through solar power, that they will hand over to panchayats. Now that in a way will totally sort of revolutionize the way power or the people look at energy, or even the service providers, because 20 years back we had this electricity boards being sort of carved out into discoms, and they are not even in a position to supply electricity bills to panchayats. They will say that urban, rural, local panchayats, their electricity pending dues is 34,000 crores, and they want the election commission or finance ministry to deduct it centrally from the grants so that it can be paid off to NTPC or anyone else. Now that goes against the spirit, and we just say you pay the bill, it will be the first charge on whatever revenue they receive, and now that can be easily monitored because all payments are being done through PFMS digitally, and it can be monitored anywhere. But they are not even prepared to give those electricity bills to the panchayats and collect them, whether it is BSNL providing internet connection, whether it is electricity department providing electricity or energy to. So these are things which need to be thought through. Now agency functions, say, sir, just one thought for food for thought. Manrega is there. Manrega, it's the responsibility of the state government to, if work is not provided, then they have to pay that unemployment allowance. And the recent report of standing committee shows that out of 7,000 odd people who were found to be qualified to receive those allowances, not just about 3%, that is 200 odd people received those allowances. When we are providing jobs to crores of people, just 7,000 out of 7, and states like Karnataka, states like none of the southern states, and they paid this paltry amount, a very normal sum, to those people who were entitled to that. Why? Because the state government has to make a budgetary provision or whatever it is, and they found that it was not worth their while. And who can fight against government, state government or central government? So if this right to work, if this guarantee becomes of the local government, turn this whole thing upside down, then does it improve the negotiating capacity of the citizen vis-a-vis government? So some of these things we need to look, and these are basic design issues which we'll need to address. Democratic functioning, state election commissions, they have been set up everywhere, but holding of elections within 5 years, there is no provision in the constitution which says that you can delay the holding of elections, but it gets delayed. You will have administrators rule, and they will say that in the State Panchayati Raj Act there is some provision, and therefore because it doesn't get challenged, it continues. But in the constitution it is very clear that you have to hold elections within 5 years. And there are a whole lot of issues there where state election commissions, as to how they are working, functioning, they are also in certain ways handicapped, because in different states you will come across different arrangements. And in certain cases they will find that the departments have not elections on party lines. In some states you have it on party lines, in some states it's not on party lines. The pros and cons of both will need to be assessed, because we can't say that this same thing can continue for next 20-25 years. So we'll need to address these issues. Direct versus indirect elections, especially in the context of elections to the chairman of district panchayats and block panchayats. We have state governments, state government of Uttarakhand, state government of Uttar Pradesh, writing to government of India that you bring about constitutional amendment and allow for direct elections to the Jila Panchayat chairman, because that will curb money power and all those things which go with it. The constitution says no, it has to be indirect election. Now if just for the sake of argument, if there were to be a directly elected Jila Panchayat chairman, in some districts his constituency would be larger than a member of parliament. What would be his status vis-a-vis? And certainly it will be bigger than the constituency of the guardian minister of that district. So all these issues need to be discussed, thrashed over, and so I'm just flagging this so that these issues come up for discussion. Role of women PRI members, yes, definitely. While we have a lot of improvement has taken place, sir, even today, sir, 2 sarpanches from Rajasthan and Andhra Pradesh, and one ZP chairman from Tripura. Today they are in the United Nations. They will be addressing a conference on localization of SDGs and role of women leaders there. And they are postgraduates. They are, one is a PhD, one is teaching engineering, and and they are sarpanch and ladies to boot. And they have now the confidence that they can go and address any gathering in the world. But at the same time, you also have cases where in the name of the sarpanch, their pradhan pati and sarpanch pati, they rule the roost. Role of ward members, while in India elections, local elections, they have a higher percentage of voter turnout than compared to state assemblies or member of parliament. So here we are better than several other countries in the world. But for ward members, now you find that a state like UP, and Dr. Chandrasekhar Pran has done a study on this, 30 to 35% of ward member constituencies, there are no candidates. The elections are held. Because there are no candidates, that Gram Panchayat cannot be constituted. So then the election commission announces a fresh election schedule, and then the sarpanch is forced by the administration that you bring out a panel of even single member from all those vacant here, and all those are declared elected unopposed. So it shows that the role and responsibilities of ward members, that is something which needs a fresh look. We have to carve out a space for them as in the standing committees, because panchayats becoming synonymous with sarpanch and panchayat secretary is totally undemocratic, and citizen participation, all these are there. I need not go about this. Sir, PESA Act again, 25 years, it's almost 25 years since it was enacted. And you find 2 states which have not yet notified the rules. And in 2 other states, that is Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh, they notified it only just 2 years back. And that also is a half-baked one. So far, this is an area, because it covers almost 108 districts. That is almost 1/8 of the total districts. And if true democracy, which Jaipal Singh Munda had mentioned, in a tribal society, they don't need to be taught about democratic functioning. They are fully aware of that. If that Gram Sabha concept can begin to work successfully in these panchayats. Similarly, on this traditional bodies in the northeast, where elections don't take place, but now the Finance Commission has also recognized them to be at par with Gram Panchayats, and they are also now beginning to get funds. So there is something which can be learned from them, but that also is a totally neglected area so far. Finances I will not go into, because all it will be discussed in detail. Here just 2 points. This share in GST and setting up a consolidated fund of local government. If on these 2 ideas, research, we do sort of detailed study, work out, it has the potential to change the whole governance structure. And it will be, because we saying you make the panchayats or local governments part of the federal scheme of things, it's not going to happen. We recognize them as multi-level governance structure, state subject, let it be there. But if just through these 2 suggestions, if they are accepted, and now it's become part of the discourse, at least the suggestion has figures in the Congress manifesto, and even the BJP manifesto says that they will do or work further to enhance financial autonomy of panchayats. They are not talking of urban local governments, but panchayats they have been forced to sort of include. So we need to work on this, and that provides us the sort of just opens the gates for further work and research on this subject. peri-urban GPs and towns, I think, sir, Professor Pethe is fully well versed. It will also come up for discussion in that next round, sir, which you would be, PIC would be hosting. So I will not go into this. But Maharashtra had prepared one draft Model Rural Transformation Act. And there I think the initiative was taken by Rural Development Department, and Pune Jila Panchayat was in the forefront. So that can be looked at. Technology and data, because internet and mobile technology, the way it has affected lives everywhere, now you have people who say we want our village to be smart gram panchayats. Why it should be restricted to 100 smart cities alone? And if government is spending lakhs of crores on spreading having this OFC network across the length and breadth of country, why not? So all these issues will need to be addressed, how technology can be used to sort of improve the functioning of local governments, even in rural areas. That is something, and to provide better services to citizens. I think that is something which we'll need to address. I will not go into details. And so broadly, sir, what I would like, because there are a whole lot of other things which will come up for discussion, I may have missed there, but to my mind what were important, I have tried to flag it here. We need to initiate that discussion. We need to sort of give them a voice. Because right now, even in whether it is in the media, whether it is in any discussions, any writings, it has not got the attention that it deserves. And one or two people who have been writing or speaking, they have been, acha, so and so, they have been classified. Ki, Mr. Vijayanand, he is from Kerala, he is a Panchayati Raj man. Mr. Raghunandan, he will be classified in one slot. And then that's the end of it. You don't need to discuss further, you don't need to take it further, you don't need to seriously debate. And here it is important that, to my mind, that we get all stakeholders interested. And stakeholders, we don't exclude anyone. Even MPs and MLAs are very important stakeholders in this. The day they begin to understand that they are not in competition with local government, but local government will actually help them in sort of delivering whatever they are supposed to deliver or work in a better manner, things will begin to change. Right now, through this MP Lads and MLA fund, they are directly sort of competing with local government and striking at the very foundation of local government. So we need to work on these, find sort of people, 10, 15, 20 MPs, 10, 15 MLAs in every state who can be worked upon, with whom they can be engaged. And now you have research fellows who are sort of allotted or who work very closely with these MPs and MLAs, do all the research work for them. Is there any way in which we can sort of engage with them that they begin to take up issues of local government in assembly as well as parliament? And that includes both rural as well as urban. And begin to raise debates on the issues which are of concern. Not how much fund has gone or who has been sort of beneficiary selection, whether it has happened rightly or wrongly, but on whole lot of other. And then even industry should begin to look at it. If, say, in these peri-urban areas, if they were to develop, and if in India there were to be 10,000 new sort of villages or towns or whatever by name you call it, that opens up a whole world of new opportunities for everyone. So we have to work with all stakeholders, that is citizens, elected representatives, then government functionaries, academia, let every NGO, civil society groups, organizations which are working in the development sector, they should become important partners in this. So if that debate begins around these issues and in a much more extensive manner, then I think we can expect that in a democratic society, in a democratic country, over a period, informed and better decision making on this important subject will happen. Thank you, sir.
Well, I want to thank Sunil for an absolutely fabulous start, and it has given a complete agenda for our next two sessions. I'm not going to make any summary because it's not needed. I only want to make two remarks. One is, of course, welcome Professor Radade. He is a distinguished director, or now vice chancellor, actually, because Cochrane University. And everybody knows him. He has been extensively writes on public policy. But I don't know, but the most important contribution he has made in recent years has been, he has been a member of Center for Democratic Reforms, which, as you know, has unlocked this completely this election. So in that sense, he is also playing a very important role in fighting for democracy. So I will conclude. I will not make any comments because further next session will be chaired by Professor Aptus. I'll invite him to chair.
I'm not chairing, I'm speaking.
Wait, yeah, but you can do chair also. Come, go speak in the chair. Yeah? So I will take. Okay, that's what.
Okay. I think Sunil Kumar has given a very extensive and sometimes even exhausting agenda because the range of issues that he has raised probably has equally more perplexing range of potential solutions. And it's very easy, it's not that easy to choose and pick and say that let this be tried or that be tried. Partly because the nature of the so-called third level of government across states is vastly different in many respects. There are of course similarities because of the nature of some of the legacies, some of them because of imitating, and some of them because they happen to be a part of a similar structure. Like for example, there is a considerable amount of similarity between what Gujarat, Karnataka and Maharashtra do in the initial phases in 1960s. There are several problems. What I would add or rather also emphasize is that over a period, not only in peri-urban areas but also in rural areas, as the average size of the village, a typical village unit, which is a Gram Panchayat or sometimes a cluster of Gram Panchayats may be required to address, that is going to change, and the nature of economy in rural areas is also been changing pretty fast than what is usually recognized and registered. Typically in public finance theory we talk about the provision of local public goods, handling with the kind of externalities which the local governments are capable or are expected to be handling. There are many shades of this. For example, there could be local public goods, there could be local externalities, there could be local public goods or not necessarily local public goods but locally provided public goods, and so on. So there is a range of variations that can occur even in terms of one single agenda. Take for example education. Education, primary healthcare centers, if you say that this should be done by one Gram Panchayat, it would be difficult. But it is always a collection of Gram Panchayats which need to be, because simply the issue is that something which is politically defined as a method of representation and something which is economically more sensible or viable way of defining a unit for the provision of services do not naturally coincide. Like it happens even in bigger cities. Take for example Pune Municipal Corporation, which was also handling the so-called PMT. Eventually it became impossible to handle it on PMT, and Pimpri-Chinchwad, another municipal corporation adjacent, so they decided to merge. So there are many such kinds of issues because the nature of services which the local governments are expected to provide on whatever grounds, that is going to be one of the problems. Second major problem which he has referred to, see the nature of political representation that we have defined for the Lok Sabha and then Vidhan Sabha and in some cases also Vidhan Parishad. And in fact we have also said that let there be a representation in Rajya Sabha. There could also be a representation at the Vidhan Parishad level also where it exists. Not all states have Vidhan Parishad. But there is a conflict. For example, to illustrate, in Maharashtra, we had this 1961 Jilla Parishad Act, which also had the Taluka Panchayat Samitis, and they also exist now, together with Gram Panchayat. Someone who would be a potential rival for Taluka Panchayat Samiti for asking for a ticket would be usually accommodated as a Taluka Panchayat Samiti. So the MLA and Taluka Panchayat Samiti Adhyaksh are usually often taken to be the rivals of each other, potential rivals of each other. Because they are likely to be potential rivals of each other, there is also an attempt to appoint the same person who would not become too much of an unhandleable kind of a rival in future. This kind of a political tussles can never be wished away, whether it is Gram Panchayat level. For example, even if you define a broader representation of Gram Panchayat and in terms of an area, the MLAs and MPs also have a problem. Part of the root of this, something like an MP-led scheme, became because government, state government, union government decides plan allocation with certain kind of a perception of their own, and the actual demand that you feel as a representation of the local area is not adequately reflected. It's not only a question of having a handle on those kind of finances, which can also be made partly, but there is some kind of a mismatch. We believe that the members of parliament are supposed to be more involved in the way in which legislation should be made and many other policy issues of the union level or the state level government be represented. Effectively, if you look at the daily routine of an MP, it is not distinguishable from a corporator in a city area, or for that matter, a Gram Panchayat leader as well, because they are required to address precisely the same issues. In fact, half of the time, many of the MPs are required to spend their time vis-a-vis the local panchayats or the local municipal corporations and so on. So that overlap is something which cannot be again so easily handled, and merely because there is some kind of a legal provision, in terms of political processes, we cannot wish it away. More important issue, which I think with the nature of rural area and the rural economy itself undergoing a change that we must notice, is there are certain kinds of new kinds of public goods. At one point of time it used to be schools. Probably in coming years it is going to be some catchment of agricultural land which produces something, and you require to have good warehousing, cold storage, packaging centers. These kinds of facilities are likely to be in great demand in coming years to come, and this cannot be always locally provided for the simple reason of economies of size and scale. And in many cases, the nature of transport connectivity is another major issue. For example, for every district road kilometer that we construct, we are required to have at least 3 times the so-called village road connectivity that we are required to build up. If we translate in terms of quality, and the nature of expenditure per kilometer would be, that turns out to be a very high budget, and there is going to be a tussle between the state government insisting on one part, or the MLA insisting on one part, and the local government body insisting on some other part, and it's also another issue. One major thing which we should be really concerned about is we keep on thinking in terms of these transformation processes more in terms of government and the government regulated institutions. The actual transformations or the demonstration effect, as we may call it, which can come in terms of economic functioning of the both transient as well as those who will continue to be rural areas in the conventional sense, is that they require something to emulate. And that sort of an institutional initiative which can produce a demonstration effect, it's something which is lacking on the ground. As a result of which, many policies which are there on paper, but we are not able to have something like an institutional structure which can be more easily replicated at such a large level. For example, nearly 28,000 Gram Panchayats in Maharashtra. We have one Mendalekha and we say that let this be emulated. This is something which is not very easy to replicate.
What is that?
There is a village in Gadchiroli which said that we will sell the bamboo auction, we will decide, we will come and we will buy at what rate. Okay? That sort of collective decision making. So perhaps the glaring example, and I think over a period of time, whether the rural or urban, one of the important constraint that one has to, very burning constraint in fact, that we have to be alert to is the nature of water availability. 3 types of broad, the personal uses, industrial uses, and other agricultural whatever other uses. For example, even drainage requires water. So, in fact,
Dr. Kelkar headed the committee where we in fact said that water of various sorts of uses, and as development takes place, the claims on water keep on multiplying and become even more multifarious. And there is something which can be considered as a public water, as a public good, which need to be provided for whatever reasons, and at least a part of that should be owned by the government as a responsibility. So if one part of water supply may be considered as public good kind of a requirement. In other parts, for example, industrial use, for example, agricultural use, and more importantly, the nature of water constraint that we are going to face in coming 30 years or so is going to be so severe that one has to more seriously consider about water recycling and its reuses. In rural areas, at least at the moment, and probably for another 10 years to come, those kinds of decentralized technologies of water recycling could be more easily tried, attempted and installed, of course with some kind of an institutional structure which supports it. And it cannot be only government institution alone. It may be NGO, it may be some other empowerment of that local body, or the conventions. For example, 60 years back, parts of the districts in Maharashtra, for example, Dhule and Kolhapur, they used to have rotation of water for the high irrigation crops on their own. This used to be called as FIR system. So they will voluntarily rotate the very same land, but to be occupied and cultivated by different persons because the water availability cannot be easily taken to some other place. So there are many such kind of what one may call as a collective kind of an effort at the rural areas. Unless Gram Panchayats have some certain degree of support of this type, the present level of staffing, the present quality of staff and administrative capacity with the Gram Panchayat is the most severe restriction, is the real severe constraint. Because it's the same one Gram Sevak who is supposed to do nearly 22 times of jobs at a time. When it was planned funds, most of the Gram Panchayat Gram Sevaks didn't know which is called a plan and which is called non-plan. They had a huge problem. And therefore, all the data that we get from Gram Panchayat, even Jilla Parishad when it comes to Maharashtra, used to be extremely chaotic kind of a data. Building up this capacity, which is the administrative capacity to plan, deliver, anticipate and respond to the nature of problems or the crises that crop up. Having such kind of authority where at least some part of that authority would be monitored by the local beneficiaries rather than by the superior in the administration, the typical problem that you get in staff and light kind of authority. So agriculture, health, education, three major areas which are being currently served by the departments of the Maharashtra government at a district level, typically administered by a deputy commissioner, and it is under his supervision most of these services are provided. Very rarely, for example, in case of schools, it is a Mukhyadhyapak who is supposed to be the person who by and large write the CRs of the, for example, teachers, the peons and whatnot. We have to also think of what is the quantum of administrative staff and the capacity that would be needed if anything that we consider as a third level of government, it should be capable of delivering it with that kind of a strength. This kind of an exercise of assessing what are the real needs, rather than simply saying that part of this which already they have someone, there is a Taluka Panchayat, Taluka Krushi Adhikari, let him be given that job. So if you look at the overlap of jobs and the capacity to deliver, there is already a deficit in terms of, for example, Rural Development Ministry, Agriculture Ministry, Forestry, and the so-called Water Resource Department. All these four departments directly affect the nature of services delivered by the state government or its schemes. But the ability of the Gram Panchayat to handle anything of this is extremely poor. So one has to in fact address this issue a little more urgently and carefully, and perhaps by simply reallocation of the existing staff which is supposed to perform that duty can be in fact handed over to the local panchayats to the extent there is enough quantum. Of course, there is a problem of defining quantum itself. Why we thought of a group Gram Panchayat? Because otherwise there were very small padas, very small wadis, which were in fact by themselves the villages, so we had to pool them. There are many services and many areas where this kind of a pooling should be anticipated and provided for, to which the Gram Panchayat would have an access, and as a partners, without which this kind of services cannot be provided. Already rural economy is experiencing massive rise of rurally provided and rurally demanded services. And partly market is addressing this, but eventually these in turn would be required to be either certain support or some maybe in some respects certain regulation on part of the state government or the local government, which needs to be in fact delineated and separately addressed to. So there is an inherent issue of finding out what level of decentralization for what kind of services. So the kind of decentralization that we think of when it comes to political representation does not naturally coincide with the kind of economic services or the economic benefits we intend to transfer it to the lower areas of, for example, democratic population. So I don't have any easy solution for this. That, like, for example, having an institutional tradition, having a cultural legacy which can probably promote this. But wherever and whenever possible, it should be necessary to understand this issue, because this has been the experience in case of, like, for example, when Maharashtra government started Swachh Gramin Paritoshik, then there are many Gram Panchayat leaders who really became aspired for this. There is one paper published by Sakar Papers Limited called Agro1. They used to conduct a large meeting of Gram Panchayat Sarpanchas. It used to be attended by something like 3,500 Gram Panchayat leaders. Whenever they came and they heard to that, when they went back, they did try something of this. So this is what I am saying, that signaling and so-called emulation effect that we would be able to induce, so that people start aspiring for it, therefore they demand for it, and therefore there is a possibility of some kind of a change naturally supported by the local population. So these are the issues which I think we should address. Of this, I am sure the most important issue that we must look at is the water resource. We have Water Regulation Commission. We have very elaborate rules about almost anything and everything that we can think about the water. But there is no institutional policy mechanism whatsoever on the ground which can translate this. May it be from the water to be given for what a variety of purposes, what should be the rate. Nothing of this is easily implemented unless there is something which is within the limits of the state government itself. For example, they can change the water rates for MIDC. But whatever water rates that they would be administering for the agriculture, the nature of monitoring system that exists in the water resource department is so weak that enforcement of those rates and volume controls becomes impossible. Nearly 20 years back, there was a great fancy, probably because of the hope of the World Bank support, the so-called local systems where people come together, they manage their own water resources on the collective basis. This has not happened. This is precisely what I mean by having some sort of a collectivity-based initiative which should be there as a supplementary mechanism, without which, merely out of the legal provisions, it is not likely to happen. So that's my primary submission. Delimitation is a very important issue in this regard either. We have very funny cases, like, for example, we have a village which is 75,000 as a population, but it is still, it is an industrial town in Kolhapur, but it prefers to be a Gram Panchayat. Okay? There are many such places in Maharashtra which should have become probably a Nagar Panchayat long back, but they prefer to be a Gram Panchayat for a variety of local reasons, local political pressures and so on. But redefinition of villages will eventually become a problem, not only because peri-urban areas, but also because the overgrowth of some of the villages themselves. Because as the road connectivity improves and the options and the potentials for the migration triggers increase, the way in which the population structure around villages will grow is going to be quite different from what we have been historically experienced. So these are the major things which I thought are important, in addition to whatever that he has said.
So now, floor is open to respond to what Pradeep has said or what Sunil has said or any other point on your own. My colleagues are taking notes also to what we are saying, so we will circulate after this conference sort of summary discussion so that you can respond. But please, who wants to start?
Thank you very much for giving me the privilege to attend this discussion. I read through Mr. Sunil Kumar's paper, it's challenging to try and capture this vast area of democratic decentralization in one paper, so this has done a commendable job at it.
I agree with you.
There are a few points that I would like to make. I would like to make some overall observations and then get into some of the nitty-gritty. In my work on decentralization over the past 15 years, after I quit the government and began to work as an international consultant, I find that over the world, this is a subject that is actually receding. It's no longer capturing the imagination of people, and this has happened due to three broad reasons. Number one is there has been a rise of authoritarian leadership, anti-democratic leadership, dictators coming up across the world. In fact, many of them are chosen through democratic preference. People seem to now repose their faith not in democracy, but using democratic means to elect authoritarian leaders whom they believe will provide them some kind of succor from problems that are beyond their capacity to handle. It's happening worldwide. Those leaders in turn paradoxically do support local governments, but not as devolved entities, more as agencies to legitimize their authoritarianism or to undercut the democratic challengers who are proximate to them and create a body of faithful followers which are below. In fact, even in our region, we find that in the past, big bang decentralization efforts were taken up by undemocratic leaders, including martial law administrators. Ayub Khan did big bang decentralization. Musharraf did big bang decentralization, appointed Nazims at the district levels who are much more powerful than our ZP presidents. And he hailed it as a big contribution of his to democracy. But it was actually to legitimize and demilitarize military rule and to create a bunch of faithful followers at a level that is at a comfortable distance from him, rather than, and to diminish the importance of parliament. So that is happening across the world. Number two, there are a lot of problems that are emerging which are wide area externalities which are beyond the capacity. Water is one, but overall climate change related issues are emerging across the world for which actually local governments are not the best levels. If you look at the literature on local government, the conventional literature talks about division of functions, finance following functions, functionaries following finance, and so on and so forth. But even if you go back to those days, there was a lot of, there were some people who went against the grain and criticized democratic decentralization, saying that it would lead to fiscal fragmentation. And you had Breton in the 80s, he said, forget about functional decentralization. You just allow all the levels of government to compete in a free-for-all. So you would have the central government providing central schools, you would have the state governments providing Moraji Desai schools, and the local panchayats will provide local schools. The private sector will also provide. Citizens will benefit as a result because of all this competition. And in that point, there was a very interesting observation made by a theoretician named Walden. He said, if you consider multi-level governments as a method to handle problems with wide area externalities, so something with low externalities like monitoring school attendance or providing midday meals is something that can be better handled by a local government, whereas a watershed or a river valley project may actually have interstate externalities, so it probably needs to be handled by a national government. He says in the future, if we have a situation by which all externalities could theoretically be handled by one level of government, having multi-level governments is actually a waste of time, unnecessary, inefficient. It was laughed at that point in time. Today we are in a position. It is possible for the union government to pinpoint a cash transfer and deliver it directly to the citizen efficiently. The housing program can today be completely managed from the top. And in fact, the paradigm shift in the way that housing programs have been managed is a good example to show how decentralization is rendered redundant because of technology. You can have a satellite picture of the house, so no ghost houses. You have the Aadhaar card and the bank details of the beneficiary. You can take a satellite picture and identify whether the house is being constructed. Why do you need a even local engineer or a sarpanch to go and inspect? That's inefficient. So the advent of technology, the emergence of problems with wide area externalities and authoritarian leadership is combining to actually render unnecessary local governments, because local government strengthening is not a political agenda and it is not an issue on which election of anybody hinges, and that is not only in our country. In fact across the region, I would say that is true. And that was bringing me to the third issue, the possibilities, the disruptive possibilities of technology to completely erase levels of intervention which were done manually. Today, in fact, I would say that the Balwantray Mehta system of multiple level governments is actually quite unnecessary. In the south, and talking about Karnataka, which had a very strong tradition of a strong Zilla Parishad, with 50% urbanization, the Zilla Parishad is redundant. The Taluk Panchayat is just crowding into the MLA space. And while those levels were necessary at a time when there was no even telephone communication, now they are nothing. In fact, both the Taluk Panchayats and the ZPs, we have done a money trail study. We have done 3 money trail studies from Center for Policy Research, what is known as the Paisa for Panchayats report. In fact, I have brought one of the reports to be handed over to you. What we looked at was how much money is being spent in a Gram Panchayat area and by whom. And we found in Karnataka, while there is a lot of money swirling around in the Panchayat, anything from 4 crore to 8 crore rupees being spent by all the government entities put together at a Gram Panchayat level, the Gram Panchayat per se handled anything from 16 lakhs to 1 crore. The rest of the government money was being spent without consultation of the Gram Sabha. We also discovered that the ZP and the Taluk Panchayats are giant ATM machines, because Karnataka makes a big hoo-ha about democratic decentralization, and they claim that a lot of money is passing through the panchayats, but it's essentially throughput to salaries for staff who are nominally placed at the Zilla Panchayat level, but this is shown as devolution, and everybody lies through their teeth. Karnataka and Kerala lie about their achievements, and I don't think the national government is good enough to catch them. It's all rhetoric and rubbish about, oh, we are champions, and nothing. They're all in a state of low-level equilibrium. So technology is also completely changing the power equations. While we commonly talk about the rivalry between the Taluk Panchayat president and the MLA, at the Gram Panchayat level today, the most important person is a data entry operator, not the Sarpanch. In fact, in Karnataka, we are doing a study of the dynamics of organizational capacity. You are talking about organizational challenges at the local level, and we find that the person who can make or break a panchayat is a data entry operator, and the person who has custody of the digital signature. In fact, I do a stand-up routine on the digital signature, not now, later. Coming to the organizational challenge, this is a report that might address some of the issues that you're talking about. Again, I'll leave it with you. In Karnataka, we did a study called the Gram Panchayat Organizational Development Project. Because the paradox is that while everybody has great expectations for the Gram Panchayat to deliver on something, the Gram Panchayats actually are sick and tired of handling everybody's expectations without the required staff. And yet they make do. And how they make do is by the Panchayat members themselves becoming quasi-executives. So what is happening is that we discovered that the individual Panchayat member, the Panch, spends an average of 25 to 30,000 rupees at his or her level to do legitimate government work without expecting a salary. They go to the Taluk office to collect a bag of cement, they replace a bulb. We don't know when the money is going to come from the government, and when it comes, then they collect the money. If the Panchayat secretary is honest in a informal kind of way, because formally he would be dishonest by actually paying on a bill, but honest to settle everything. And this 20,000 rupees or 25,000 rupees spent by the Panchayat member in doing legitimate government work is not paid by the government. and they get a sitting fee of 3,000 rupees. So that is stolen from NREGA through fake attendance and so on and so forth. And then the auditor is also paid off so that this adjustment can be done so that the panchayat runs smoothly and meets the expectations of people. In fact, I actually started a not-for-profit company called Avantika Foundation. We did this study. This was done by the Ministry of Panchayati Raj, partly funding it, and Rohini Nilekani funding it. It was the first innovation project under the innovation window of the Capacity Development Fund of the Ministry of Panchayati Raj. And we actually paid that difference of amount to the panchayat members and created, based on the inspiration we derived from an Andhra Pradesh panchayat, where the panchayat president declared himself to be the chief minister of the panchayat, Ganga Devarapalli, Warangal district, and he appointed individual members as cabinet ministers. So we called them Mukhyasthas, and the members, instead of relying on the standing committee system, which is actually ordained under the law, created an extra legal system of individual cabinet ministers. We paid them the salary to ensure that they would not steal money from NREGA. And then the results were given to the Karnataka government to tell the Karnataka government that every time you devolve or give an agency function to the panchayat, keep aside 5% as administrative cost and give that to the panchayat so that the panchayat can legitimately pay for the administrative burden. And you don't have to give staff, because the panchayat members themselves, if they are given the money, will be a far cheaper alternative than trying to recruit a government official there and give pension and so on and so forth, and it will actually eliminate a lot of corruption. This was not accepted because it just sounded too good to be done. So why do good things? I mean, it just takes the fun out of being an IAS officer. So this was not done. There are a few very important points that Mr. Sunil Kumar has pointed out, and I provide a few suggestions. Number one is, while I look through the literature that he has quoted at the end of the paper, I kind of smile to myself that the Ministry of Panchayat has either lost its institutional memory or chooses to ignore what was done before India got independence in 2014. There was a lot of things that were done. I have a list of this, I just read it out. There were 7 roundtables which were conducted by Mr. Iyer. Remarkable for such an acerbic person to actually achieve that level of consensus. But he did. The notes of those meetings and the roundtable 150 conclusions are a brilliant starting point. And as they say, the more things change, the more they remain the same. All the problems that were listed there, all the action points are still existing as of today. Then every centrally sponsored scheme was studied deeply in the period during UPA 1. Of course, towards UPA 1, at the end of it, it resembled a car which was being driven with one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brake, because there were the social conscience-minded people in UPA 1 who wanted Panchayati Raj, and then there were the neoliberals like Chidambaram and Montexing Ahluwalia who didn't want it. So it kind of was very frustrating to work at that time. But every centrally sponsored scheme was studied in detail, and very precise institutional mechanism reforms were suggested as to how to make the panchayat central in the planning and implementation. That includes electricity decentralization. There was a 3-step transition from a centralized mode to a decentralized model. I love this Pink Floyd kind of sound system manipulation going on. Anyway, there was a consultation with state election commissioners, which are some very important pointers. Sadly, I think here it is the Supreme Court that has let us down. There was a very clear 5-judge bench relating to Ahmedabad municipality in 2006, which underscored the point that you made. But state governments have been able to run circles around the Supreme Court and High Courts by doing delimitation just before the elections, or messing around with the reservation matrix and getting it stayed by one of their friends and things. In fact, I have appeared as a public interest lawyer myself personally, arguing against the Karnataka government, and we won a case where finally the elections was held. There was a lot of work that has been done on decentralized planning. There was a decentralization planning working group report 2006 headed by Mr. V. Ramachandran. There was another report of 2007 which talked about decentralized planning in the non-panchayat areas. That is the 6 scheduled areas and the non-6 scheduled areas such as Ladakh, Manipur, etc. District planning guidelines issued by the Planning Commission in 2006. There was the Backward Regions Grant Fund guidelines of 2008. There's a 3-volume district planning manual of 2009 which has a chapter 8 which talks about the Metropolitan Planning Committee and the District Planning Committee and how it might function. Some of it is outdated, overtaken by time. Then in UPA 2 period there was a report, again a 3-volume report on modifying centrally sponsored schemes to make them Panchayat Raj friendly, and it talks about a transition of the how to transform the control, management and supervision of employees to the panchayats over 14 areas of employee control, right from recruitment to handling pensions. All that data is there. I don't know if the Ministry of Panchayat Raj has it, because every secretary would come and engineer a tsunami that would wipe the website clean. Luckily I am a hoarder, so I've got the whole thing here, right on my laptop here, and in very hard disks at home, so I can give all this to you. I hope it's useful. Center for Policy Research's work on consultancies for the 14th and the 15th Finance Commission, I think were pretty good, even though I say so myself pretty modestly. Of course, we were hampered terribly by lack of data, and we were guided tremendously by Mr. Dr. Govind Rao, was a member of the 14th Finance Commission. He came hard on us, but actually it gave us a great satisfaction that we calculated, we created a calculation that can be used at least as a starting point to calculate the cost of service delivery with respect to at least the 5 most core area services: water, sanitation, roads, electricity, community assets, something else. These 5 we gave it, and it's a very great source of satisfaction to us that when our calculation was for 2,37,000 crores to be given to the panchayats, and they finally gave 2,80,000, including urban areas. So broadly they went by our recommendations as to what could be given to the panchayats. One of the things that you will have to look at, and this is a very important thing, that while I criticize Kerala a lot, that's my birthright. I'm a Malayali. We have only 2 attitudes in life: contempt and utter contempt. So I can criticize, and he knows, we laugh about it, they make fun of me and all that. But the point is that Kerala is on one different path, and it's incredibly interesting to be, even to have the privilege of working on that path. Number one, you have 2 districts in Kerala with not even one person on the BPL list. We have a state that was, when I was young, 67% below the poverty line, is now 0.4% below the poverty line. So this is, you are talking about a post-transition state with depopulation, lifestyle diseases, massive environmental challenges, dispersed urban, urbanization. So Kerala is a state with the largest number of census towns. It has 461 census towns, but only 59 of them are statutory towns. So there are almost 400 out of 900 panchayats which are actually urban in character, classified as urban in the census, in the 2011 census. We sadly don't have a later figure. So the kind of solutions that Kerala is looking out for is not applicable, and Kerala should not be taken as the model. And one of the biggest dangers that we have is the Ministry of Panchayat Raj doing an averaging out and creating guidelines that may promote decentralization in one state but will hamper decentralization in another state. I mean, the GPDP guidelines are that. The GPDP guidelines were good for a state that was setting out to do democratic decentralization, to the laggards, but it actually were used by bureaucrats in Karnataka to create vicious centralization. This is an issue on which I have a great fight with Vijayanand every time we meet. Because the Finance Commission grants of the 14th Finance Commission were to be given to the panchayats unhindered by any conditionalities, and the Ministry of Panchayat Raj diverted that money and imposed conditionalities which destroyed the impetus for true devolution in a state like Karnataka while promoting devolution in Jharkhand. So this averaging out is something that we need to be careful about. There are many such issues on which I could go about. Design issues of urban and rural. I think the entire MPC, DPC system is just unworkable. But I am very scared to suggest an amendment to the Constitution because Mr. Iyer and I have this constant fight. When I venture to suggest that the Constitution should be changed, he flies into a rage and he says, no, if you touch it, and he's right. He says the moment you touch that constitutional amendment, you'll have all the MPs from all the parties jumping in to withdraw everything. So just leave it as it is, do not mess around with it, try and work within that. But as far as this part is concerned, we just have to do away with this rural-urban binary. It's just unworkable to work it within the constitutional framework, or we just have to ignore that and try and do something. I am very excited by this. I'll first of all give you all the documentation that I have, as I said, in the Ministry of Panchayati Raj, when we create documents, say a document would go through 15 versions. So I've kept all the versions. Some of the earlier versions, which are not official documents, are far more useful. The final one, which is typically watered down, eventually everybody gets a little scared. Ye mat kaho, wo aise kaho, and becomes wishy-washy, like an ice cream kept out in the open. So you have to look at some of the earlier things to capture some of the ideas. Some of them were they were too revolutionary at that point in time. I remember, sir, appearing before you and making this passionate pitch to say that the Panchayat was not part of your 13th Finance Commission report. I could understand. It was impossible for you to recommend such a thing at that stage. But today that's an idea that we need to really push. So every idea has its time. So I'd be very happy to associate myself with whatever work you have to do, and I give you all this documentation because I pride myself on being very systematic in how this has been arranged. And on each one of these, there are good ideas in the closet or good pointers to what people have done which are ignored in the past, which can actually be pulled together to get something purposive out of it. And I don't know, sir, to what extent we can affect the government of India, but in state governments there is always a possibility. It's much more exciting to work at the state government level. It's also very exciting to work with champion panchayats. In fact, networking of champion panchayats and ignoring the state governments sometimes gives you far greater pleasure. This is something that Kerala did brilliantly during COVID. They would conduct Zoom calls where panchayats were exchanging good ideas amongst themselves. And in one case, when everybody was speaking in Malayalam, there was this voice that piped up and said, "Aap zara Hindi mein baat kar sakte hain?" Who got this Zoom call connect, and he has tuned into Kerala's Zoom call discussions on how to handle the nitty-gritty of handling COVID, and he wanted to know. So there are some brilliant examples of people working like this, and there are some champion panchayats. I would imagine in Kerala about 30-40% panchayats, about 1,000 panchayats, 1/6, not a small number, is functioning well. So if you tie up with panchayat associations, the Maharashtra Mahila Rajsata Andolan, much more happening place, and much more inspiring, and you'll be much more happy because you'll actually see some tangible actions, and you can conveniently ignore the point. They are too far away to handle. So if that is from an operational perspective, some of these things, while we also work on law change and process change and getting the right things written into reports that nobody reads, but you can actually get things done on the ground by working very closely with panchayats, compiling good examples and upscaling. So I'll be very happy to help out.
Thank you very much. I just want to provoke me to say two things. One is that you reminded me of the movie, brilliant movie by Danny Kaye called Inspector General. We talked about corruption. I don't know if you've seen that movie. You must see that movie. Second is that does the Moily Commission also have recommendations?
Which one, sir?
Moily.
Yes. But I didn't agree with Mr. V. Ramachandran's idea of a district government. His suggestion on this point was to create some kind of a district government, which was which actually we formally opposed in the Ministry of Panchayat Raj for the same reason, saying that any fooling around with the constitutional mechanism might only lead to a reversal. And I don't think the idea was fleshed out enough.
The other comment in defense of Sumit Bose, I would say that although we didn't do what he wanted to do, but he did give a very new way of mimicking devolution in third tier.
Yes, yes.
So that way I think in a way very important.
So your commission made a paradigm shift which was reversed by the next commission.
I know, that I didn't want to comment.
Yeah,
because
you said that you give them a revenue share.
That is also, he mimicked
Yes.
the devolution.
Yes.
So that's one I think we must
But that was not continued by the 15th Finance Code.
well, so, anyway, I don't want to comment because one of I'm so can't resist from mentioning dictate from my mentor, which is Lavraj Kumar, my mentor. He said, Vijay, never comment on successors.
No, not successors.
And never comment on the
I'm just
predecessors.
saying on the idea.
I know, still, I will say pass to that. And what is the other accusation against Sumit was?
No. The agency funds.
So that's what I'm saying, given, but he gave much more meta solution of devolution. That's what I wanted to.
Everyone, we missed out. I'll tell you what we missed out.
Yeah.
We didn't give funds, for example, to cantonments. We had to wait till the last. And when that also because I was doing a committee on cantonments, when I noticed it, that populations in cantonments are not getting finance commission funds. It happens.
No, but the other point also,
we get better and better.
Wisdom in hindsight, is that some of the state governments only issued the formal orders with respect to some of the conditionalities, well thought out conditions. For example, to appoint a property tax commission, all the state governments issued one government order right at the end. None of those, and that was a very good suggestion because panchayat leaders do not want to take the political flak for increasing property rates.
That was a
And so distanced it, by distancing it from the panchayat.
Correct.
You kind of externalize, allow them a chance to escape and say, "Humne
Yeah, correct.
But every state government issued the order, none of them worked. And actually, West Bengal was probably the one state where a little bit, which only place which worked.
Thank you, sir, for having me here, and a wonderful paper by Sunil and Jutika, what you circulated, that was wonderful. And we've had the benefit of Professor Apte's comments, and of course, Raghunandan, all his wisdom, and all the papers he hoards. But, panchayats continue to be, I don't know, what should we call it, a whipping boy, whatever. The latest to demand things from the panchayat is the insurance regulator. I sit on boards of 2 insurance companies, and I was told that now they're going to Gram Panchayats. They've said social and rural obligation has to be measured in Gram Panchayats. Now, in the Gram, and they said the insurance companies must get a sign-off by the Panchayat secretary that you have done so many insurance. I had to tell them that, look, there are so many panchayats. I told the company, I don't know how the regulator will take it, that there are so many, what that committee report, I still don't know the figures, but where each panchayat doesn't have a secretary. But what I was actually getting to is, it's so varied. So we still have even those states which have not done it in the manner, I think Telangana you mentioned, that this number of panchayats, the other panchayats, in many states, it is of necessity that panchayats have a population of 12 to 1500. We know that. Parts of Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, they will have that. So what do? We have panchayats of 1000, we heard lakh, 75,000, anything in between. So this is our country, and we have to deal with that. So maybe perhaps break up the problem, sir. I mean, even from this thing, can we now look at, if you're doing a piece, several pieces of work, sir. So let us address something to the central government. You have to, I mean, without the central government. Others to the state government, as you just mentioned, that perhaps more action there. Partnership with panchayats, whether that is the role of PIC, I don't know. I mean, perhaps not, in the sense you'll pick up then, but you'll not really get into partnering panchayats. But then there is the Finance Commission, which is now come. Now with the and there is pieces of forward-looking work on constitution, on law change, constitution, especially constitutional. For example, so the idea of GST or a consolidated fund. So there are different pieces of work. And even the state government work, can we make some recommendations on just administrative changes as opposed to law changes? So I think, or even the Finance Commission, some things could be commissioned. I must defend my former minister. Chidambaram headed the manifesto committee and he got in GST. Of course, I had a small role in it. Harsh was staying with me. And doing a conference, I gave your paper to Harsh. Harsh Mandar, that is. You see, so I think, sir, let's break up the problem, sir. And I think that the time has come when we must recognize that these 1200 population panchayats will coexist with larger panchayats. So we have to find a solution for that. How do we do it? Now technology has come, which wasn't there earlier. Perhaps some technology solution will emerge there. So I am suggesting that for the work we do going ahead, we break up the problems. And so I mean, after my work in that was 2017, I think, that committee report, I really am not in touch with panchayats. But in the other fields I work, in the both in the NGO sector and I said even otherwise, I find a new role, new things. Water, for example. You mentioned water in a big way. Now water, now with this Har Ghar Nal, and then the Jal Nigams working in the states, there's a huge new dimension to it. Now who maintains? What do panchayats do when something breaks down? Do they wait for that, for Jal Nigam to come and repair their taps? It's not possible. This has not been thought through by anyone yet. So because of my whatever work we do in water aid, some of these problems I've been seeing, and it's really, and about Kerala being miles ahead. You know, what would be the rates? I mean, someone has to collect something on water. It can't be free forever. And so Kerala has suggested to panchayats that it should be volumetric. Imagine another country, whereas many states are saying, wait, we don't know, water rate something, oh, just wait. So we have this, you know, this is not one country, this is perhaps several countries as far as panchayats go, side by side. So what do we do? Do we recommend, perhaps we do something not even for all states. Perhaps you make a set of recommendations for states with these smaller panchayats, which have their own set of problems, and then this is my and you see new things. I mean, technology is bringing in new solutions, but our new sort of efforts are bringing in their own problems also. Water is one. I mentioned it happens, multi-level panchayat systems, one source of water, one pipeline laid, 10 panchayats using it. What happens? We don't have guidelines for that yet anywhere. A toll road. So I see this from because I'm on the NHA INVIT. Whenever they're toll roads, especially when it's been given over monetized, the panchayats are around. They use that road. Constant problem. Now some will say this corruption at the toll tax. It is not entirely corruption at that level. Some adjustments have to be made. They have to be with the panchayats. They have to use that road. Unlike others who pass through once in a while or on a commercial basis, for them it's the question of livelihood. They have to get into the road, get out of it. How do we, their needs versus the fact that the InvIT has been promised or any agency monetizing the road is collecting toll. These are new areas. So what I'm saying is something old persists. We still have to get a secretary to a panchayat or a technical person at the panchayat, and then there are these new areas. So it's a whole.
There's one area where there's a crying need for good work. That is that today there is a huge amount of data, raw data, that was not available, let's say 10 years back. All the states somehow slowly. That's one good thing about this is you plan to do something in 3 years, it happens in 8 years. But it happens. Are putting out raw data, and there's been consistency checks and so on and so forth. There are some problems in terms of presentation of the data. For example, in Karnataka, we discovered that income data is put out in Excel and expenditure data is put out on PDF. So you need to clean up, but even that the NIC is very responsive. You tell them and slowly. But the problem is that bureaucrats and you would imagine Panchayat Raj secretaries in the government or even the levels below. When the World Bank did a decentralization project in Karnataka, they gave money to create capacities in the state secretariat to analyze decentralization, because you need to have a decision support system. And there was something called a decentralization cell that was set up. But the moment the World Bank funding stopped, that cell left. But the data is available. Nobody is analyzing that data. And it doesn't cost much. It just requires some good set of people to look at it, number one. Number two, when you analyze the data, I think there are two techniques that are being ignored. One is that everybody uses a very school level averaging. For heaven's sake, don't do averaging, do frequency. Kind of solutions that you can provide, even within a state, radically different. For example, in Karnataka, if you look at water supply, and if you do a frequency distribution of habitation patterns, you will find that the Bidar Gram Panchayat is totally different from the Mangalore Gram Panchayat. The Mangalore Gram Panchayats have been doing volumetric water distribution for now well up to 2 decades, because they take an example from Mangalore and try and implement it in the border of Maharashtra in Bidar. It's a different game. So you have to look at agroclimatic zones rather than districts. There are 18 agroclimatic zones in Karnataka, and the habitation pattern for the same service will differ. So that data, if you can analyze, maybe do a test run by picking, let's say, Maharashtra, and looking at all the sources of data in Maharashtra, do some number crunching, put together a small team of people to ask practical questions from the numbers that you are crunching, and provide it. Maybe you will emerge with a template that can be replicated in other states. There again, I can put you in touch with some of the people in Karnataka who are totally frustrated. I mean, they've done all this. Secretary has a time to actually look at the data, and so they take wrong decisions, or they take suboptimal decisions. They don't recognize the champions. In fact, the best thing that could be done is actually to help champion panchayats upscale. You really don't need a capacity development system at all. Kila doesn't today actually need to train for panchayats to interact. And that's why I'm saying that some of the things that Kerala has done is amazing in terms of just sharing of good experiences. And Karnataka is getting there, not through the SIRD, but through an independent panchayat association. So the panchayat associations, if I can take a minute of how it works, the president of the panchayat association has 237 WhatsApp. WhatsApp group is for a taluk, and it only comprises of the presidents of the panchayats. Then the presidents create WhatsApp groups connecting to all the members. So sometimes the government issues a circular, and the circular reaches the panchayat members faster than it goes through the official channel, because he collects the circular in Bangalore, scans it, sends it to 237 WhatsApp groups. They send it down to each of the members. And otherwise, this important game is that the Panchayat Secretary conceals a circular that actually gives powers and responsibilities, and it takes 6 months to communicate to people. I used to sit and answer phone calls at 10 o'clock at night. People call me and say, sir, the government has issued this circular. My Panchayat Secretary is denying that it has been issued. You please speak to him. And I would scan it, and I had a scan, I would send it to him. Now I don't need to do it because the Panchayat Okkuta, the Okkuta is a Kannada name for the network, you do it. Now we are doing YouTube channels, clarifying question and answers. So we are developing our own capacity. I work pro bono with the Okkuta because it's much more fun. SIRD is just telling Panchayats what they cannot do.
This is the association?
This is a Panchayat association. Panchayat association which we tried to register, then they themselves said we do not want a registration, we'll create it as a social network, that's it. So it's done entirely through WhatsApp, and as I said, there's one president doing it, and he's an engineer, he's a Panchayat member, he's an engineer who does it.
I'll try to be brief, as brief as possible. I think I'll just focus on what are the research areas Pune International Center can focus on. I think the major action needs to be done at the state level when we look at center, state and local government level. I think there should be strong consensus that needs to evolve where I think the states would be willing to devolve both administrative as well as financial powers to local governments, and also in a genuine manner empower them to make it possible. And I think a lot of issues that are being flagged here come together. I would like to address this question from another angle. I think there are a couple of big crises that India is facing, job crisis, women's level force participation, and also I think failure of foundational learning. I think we have ASER's recent report shows that since 2012 there has not been any significant improvement in foundational learning in government schools. I think third grade around 30% age appropriate learning. And most of the places the discourse is techno-managerial. But I think the most important stakeholder, the parents, are totally out of government school system or they don't have any voice. And definitely I think decentralization, I was director of school education in Rajasthan, managing 220,000 teachers long back. Only thing I was doing was transfers and postings and attending contempt of court cases. So that was the administrator of the. We never talked about quality of education or achievements. So I think we have created monstrous administrative structures, largely because of high degree of centralization, which we call them as thick problems, and probably I think these thick problems probably need to be resolved at the local level. So my one suggestion would be Pune International Center to focus on one of these foundational, extremely important challenges for this nation, and figure out both within the country and also internationally how we can, in addition to techno-managerial, how can we address this issue. The second, I think Professor Apte has mentioned about externality and whether political representation and economic would go together, the service economics. But the third tier government has provided for district, block as well as panchayat. Most of the time block and district administration probably don't have any function. I think water supply probably at some level fits into the block to get the economy of scales. Some places it is the district, and maybe toll roads and others it is above the district. So I think the second area of research could be preparation. Like most of this confusion undermines the fundamental need to devolve. Like Bhutan as a country, it's around 700,000 population. They have everything. Starting from their own central bank,
So I think we can figure out, but that could be the second area. The third, I think this whole authoritarianism going along with the technology. Huge amount of data is collected. They are not even shared. The GST data is not shared with the state government. ICDS data is not shared even with the state government. Forget about Panchayat. And at the state level, no one knows how to do what with the data. It's so huge, they can't make. So I think we should come up with serious policy, because if the key stakeholders don't have any understanding about outcomes, critical outcomes, and someone who has neither the ability nor the commitment for outcomes is collecting all this data in some control room in the state headquarters or even Delhi. So I think we need to figure out some policies, but also around sharing this data, and also this whole, this whole issue that everything can be quantified. I think these thick problems, probably we have not yet quantified. Our sciences doesn't appreciate anthropological, sociological solutions, where I think we need to have discourse around qualitative. So decentralized collection of data. I think we really need, we probably need to go back to 30, 40 years back, literature on participatory collection of data and planning. I think people sit around, collect data, maybe qualitative, quantitative, and then use their common sense, wisdom to figure out. Instead of this whole figuring out what can be digitizable and then collect and send it to the center. So these are few areas, and the last one I want to talk about is about the drinking water, sir. In ADB, I worked for 15 years in ADB. I was largely looking at urban water supply systems, and also to some extent peri-urban or large rural areas. I think there are lots of success stories. In Nepal, during their very, very fragile period, there are at least 60 large town type where we have set up, there was a state government level entity, but which was providing the technical, managerial and financial support. But most of the management was done by smaller entities. They had smart meters. They were managing, they had user fees, and they were managing operations, maintenance, and little bit of funds. So I think we should, and I think India is in a very, very bad state, even in large cities. Like Delhi has 50% non-revenue water. Dhaka water supply system, they have 9% water losses, Singapore probably 6. And Dhaka is able to collect over and above operations cost and repay their debt. So that's the, I think there's a huge amount of work that we need to do, and it is possible. So I think, sir, these are few research areas, and I will be more than happy to contribute to whatever extent I can.
Thank you.
थैंक यू जे ये अवसर मिला यहाँ आप लोगों के अनुभव मेरा अपना पूरा एक यात्रा है, पूरी अनुभव है, और वो अनुभव पंचायत को लेकर के नीचे से ऊपर की ओर की है। विशेष करके एक सामाजिक कार्यकर्ता की दृष्टि से जो अनुभव है वो आपके सामने है। तीसरी सरकार अभियान उसी क्रम में शुरू हुआ है। उसका कुछ बैकग्राउंड था जिसको हल्के से शायद वो इन सब चीज़ों के साथ जुड़ता हो। नेहरू युवा केंद्र में काम करता था युवाओं के साथ। 1995 में पंचायती राज शुरू हुआ था प्रैक्टिकली। उस समय हम यूपी में थे, वहाँ पर एक प्रोजेक्ट चला रहे थे, यूथ एक्शन गोल 2000, एजुकेशन फॉर हेल्थ फॉर ऑल, और उसको बेस बनाया था पंचायत को ही। पहले से उसमें ऐसा कोई प्लान नहीं था। मैं ये कह रहा हूँ जितना है वो सब एक प्रोसेस में निकल करके आया है, जितने प्रयोग हैं वो सब। तो एक विद्यार्थी की हैसियत से और एक कार्यकर्ता या प्रयोगकर्ता के रूप में वो अनुभव को शेयर कर रहा हूँ। ये लगा कि पंचायत को लेकर के, हेल्थ और एजुकेशन को लेकर हम लोग ये हुआ कि पंचायती राज बन गया था, चुनाव हो गया था 95 में, लेकिन प्रशिक्षण या इस तरह की कोई चीज़ें तो हुई ही नहीं। पूरे 5 साल तक राज्य सरकार की तरफ से कुछ भी नहीं हुआ था उस समय। 1 साल बाद ही हम लोगों ने, मतलब जो हम लोगों का ग्रुप था और जो प्रोजेक्ट था उसमें 3 थे। स्टेट गवर्नमेंट उसका पार्टनर थी, यूनिसेफ पार्टनर था और गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया की तरफ से नेहरू युवा केंद्र, और मैं उसका एक नोडल ऑफिसर के रूप में काम कर रहा था। और एक साथ 15,000 ग्राम पंचायतों में वो स्टार्ट हुआ था, 15,000 ग्राम पंचायत में। तो ये हुआ कि गांव के लेवल पर देखा कि 5 संस्थाएं हैं जो काम कर रही हैं इस विषय पर, और 5 सब्जेक्ट लेकर के हम लोग काम कर रहे थे। संस्थाएं थी, युवा क्लब था, यूथ क्लब था जो नेहरू युवा केंद्र के थ्रू था, एजुकेशन था, हेल्थ डिपार्टमेंट था, पंचायत थी, तो और ग्रामीण विकास था। तो ये मिलाकर के 5 थे। तो हम लोगों ने एक प्रोजेक्ट, एक कार्यक्रम शुरू किया, उसका नाम रखा पंच परमेश्वर कार्य योजना, एक्शन प्लान। 5 डिपार्टमेंट या 5 संस्थाएं और 5 विषय ले लिए थे, जिसमें हेल्थ था, एजुकेशन था, सैनिटेशन था, महिला एवं बाल कल्याण का विषय था, इस तरह। उसको करते समय फिर जब इतनी लंबी पंचायतों के साथ काम करने लगे, एक प्लान बनाया, पूरा स्टेट गवर्नमेंट का पूरा सपोर्ट था, वहाँ एपीसी की तरफ से सर्कुलर जारी हुआ था, सारे कलेक्टर लगाए गए थे, कमिश्नर उसके साथ ही, बहुत बढ़िया। सेम डे, एक ही दिन 15,000 ग्राम पंचायतों में वो प्लान बना था, एक ही दिन, सेम डे। उसका पूरा फॉर्मेट, उसके पहले पूरा जो प्रेजेंट स्टेटस था उसका विलेज को लेकर के उसका सर्वे करना, और यूनिसेफ का था, तो बेसिकली काफी कुछ बहुत प्लान वे में हो रहा था। फिर उसके बाद हम लोगों ने 15,000 ग्राम पंचायत के प्रधान और उप प्रधान, सरपंच और उप सरपंच का प्रशिक्षण, उससे एक एक्सपीरियंस निकल करके आया, बहुत सारी चीजें नए सिरे से समझ में आई। दूसरा बना था कि फिर 99 में जब 5 साल बीत रहा था, तो मैंने 5 राज्यों की साइकिल से यात्रा की, वो एक एक्सपीरियंस था। तो 5 स्टेट की और 90 डेज की साइकिल यात्रा थी, और उत्तर प्रदेश था, मध्य प्रदेश था, राजस्थान, हरियाणा और पंजाब। 90 डेज साइकिल से चला और 400 कुछ ग्राम सभाओं में बैठा, ग्राम सभाओं के साथ बैठक की। एक दिन में 4 से 5 जगह मीटिंग करता था। मैं खुद 90 दिन साइकिल चला रहा था। स्टेट उस समय सरकार से छुट्टी ले लिया था 90 दिन की, और उसके बाद उस पूरी यात्रा पर निकला। बहुत सारा एक्सपीरियंस हुआ, खूब बातचीत हुई, और उसका पर्पज एक ही था कि 5 साल पंचायती राज के बीत रहे, गांव समाज कहाँ खड़ा है, सीधे कि एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन क्या कर रहा है, क्या उससे ज्यादा लोगों में क्या बदलाव आ रहा है, लोग क्या सोच रहे हैं। उस पूरे अध्ययन के बाद एक किताब लिखी, उसके बाद पंचायत और गांव समाज पुनर्जागरण की राह, काफी बड़ा, करीब 400 पेज की एक बुक आई, और पूरा बिल्कुल जमीनी सच्चाई को लेकर जो लोगों से सुना, जो किया, वो रहा। उसके बाद फिर दिल्ली चला आया, नेशनल लेवल पर डायरेक्टर का काम देखने को चला, जिम्मेदारी मिली। उसी समय मैं फिर 2002 में स्टडी लीव लेकर के शोध कार्य में चला गया। इलाहाबाद यूनिवर्सिटी के साथ शोध शुरू किया। 5 राज्यों का तुलनात्मक अध्ययन, विषय पंचायत ही था। पंचायत और डेवलपमेंट और यूथ का क्या एटीट्यूड और बिहेवियर कैसे चेंज होता है, इसको लेकर उसमें कर्नाटक था, पश्चिम बंगाल था, मध्य प्रदेश था, बिहार था और उत्तर प्रदेश था। 5 राज्यों का एक समाज मनोविज्ञान की दृष्टि से तुलनात्मक अध्ययन किया। उसी पीरियड में फिर लौट के 2004 में ज्वाइन किया। 2005 में मणिशंकर अय्यर जी, और 5 में उनके पास युवा मंत्रालय भी हो गया। उसी समय रघुनंदन जी के साथ भी काफी मुलाकात हुई थी। उस समय एक पंचायत युवा शक्ति अभियान शुरू हुआ था, जो युवा मंत्रालय और भारत पंचायती राज मंत्रालय को मिलाकर मुझे ही उसका नोडल ऑफिसर बनाया गया, दोनों मंत्रालय की तरफ से। और अद्भुत, जैसे बता रहे थे, वो पीरियड पंचायतों के लिए बहुत था। न जाने कितने एमयू स्टेट गवर्नमेंट के साथ साइन हुए थे। पंचायत युवा शक्ति अभियान 12 राज्यों में शुरुआत की गई थी। चीफ मिनिस्टर और मिनिस्टर पंचायती राज, भारत सरकार, ज्वाइंट एक होता था। 500 युवा मंडल और 500 पंचायत के सरपंचेस युवा मंडल अध्यक्ष, उनको एक साथ बैठाया जाता था और ज्वाइंटली वो दोनों क्या कर सकते हैं इस पर काफी चर्चा होती थी और ये हुआ। 2009 आया, बदल गया सब कुछ, नए मंत्री। फिर ये एक यात्रा थी जो बहुत सारे एक्सपीरियंस, लेकिन नीचे के धरातल के सारे एक्सपीरियंस आए। 3-4 चीजें बहुत समझ में आई उस पीरियड के बाद, और 9-10 से ही कोशिश करने लगा कि सरकार से निकलूं और कुछ अब जमीनी स्तर पर लोगों के साथ मिल करके कुछ काम किया जाए। खैर वो नहीं सोए। 2013 में मेरा बीआरएस स्वीकार किया गया लंबे अरसे के बाद और निकला। 3-4 चीजें जो समझ में आई थी, एक तो ये आया कि जो भी अधिनियम या ये है और जो कहा जा रहा है गांव में उसका कोई असर नहीं। मतलब लोग मानते ही नहीं कि, चूंकि पंचायत को 2 नजरों से देखते थे। एक तो सामाजिक संगठन के रूप में जो था उनकी परंपरा में, उनकी संस्कृति में, कि लोग एक जगह बैठ जाते थे, अपने झगड़े निपटाते थे। मूलतः ये न्याय संस्था थी। डेवलपमेंट के प्रोसेस तो अंग्रेजों के समय से विशेष रूप से इसके साथ जुड़े, बाकी फिर राजाओं के समय में भी कुछ होते थे, लेकिन मूलतः न्याय संस्था के रूप में जानी जाती थी और वही आकर्षित भी करती थी हम लोगों को। खैर फिर दूसरा ये लगा कि वन मैन शो बन करके रह गई है ज्यादातर राज्यों में, जहां जहां गया जो देखा कि सरपंच ही सब कुछ है और ये आया। फिर 2010 से ये समझ में आने लगा था मैंने कि जब तक ये अगर सरकार है, ये समझ में आने लगा, और सरकार है तो उसका एक इंस्टीट्यूशन होना चाहिए। सरकार तो एक संस्था होती है, व्यक्ति नहीं होता लोकतंत्र में। तो इंस्टीट्यूशनल डेवलपमेंट की बात समझ में आने लगी कि ये जब तक नहीं होगा, लेकिन किस रूप में हो, लोग जाने कि ये गवर्नमेंट है, ये सेल्फ गवर्नमेंट है, स्व सरकार है, लोकल गवर्नमेंट जिसको कहते हैं उसको जाने। और तो ये तीसरी सरकार अभियान को लेकर इस क्रम में शुरू किया था हमने। और अभी 10 सालों में जो एक्सपीरियंस आया और जो प्रयोग हुए, अब उस पर बहुत संक्षेप में, क्योंकि ये सब जोड़ के फिर उस जितना सुनील जी का जो पेपर प्रस्तुत हुआ है वो अपने आप में बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण है वो सारे, और वो सारी चीजें निकल के आती हैं। दूसरा ये इसका जो प्रोसेस चला वो 3-4 स्टेज इसके बने। पहला ये बना कि अगर ये संस्था है तो लोगों को बताना चाहिए, तो एक अवेयरनेस का काम शुरू किया और उस अवेयरनेस में पंचायत प्रतिनिधियों को या सरकार के लोगों को एकदम से हम लोगों ने शुरुआती दौर में नहीं शामिल किया। सिविल सोसाइटी को और गांव के सामान्य लोगों को बताने की कोशिश पूरे यूपी में बड़े लार्ज स्केल में, ये बिल्कुल लोक अभियान के रूप में चला, कहीं से कोई सपोर्ट नहीं किसी तरह का, सारे लोग, लेकिन बहुत बड़े पैमाने पर यूपी में चलाया गया। एक तो ये लेवल था। फिर ये समझ में आने लगा कि अगर इसको इंस्टीट्यूशन बनाना है तो इंस्टीट्यूशन तो सदस्यों से बनती है संस्थाएं, अध्यक्ष तो बाद में चुना जाता है, संस्थाएं बनाती हैं, तो कैसे वार्ड मेंबरों को इस बारे में एक्टिव किया जाए। तो हम लोगों ने फिर मिशन समृद्धि एक संस्था है उसके साथ मिलकर थोड़ा सा उन्होंने कुछ सपोर्ट किया, तो एक प्रयोग शुरू किया कि पंचायत रिसोर्स सेंटर बना करके कुछ काम की शुरुआत की जाए। तो वो शुरू किया जब उसको लेकर के, उसमें जब जाकर गांव के पंचायतों का हम लोग सर्वे करने लगे प्रेजेंट स्टेटस, तो करीब 15 जिलों में 15 गांव पंचायतों में कर रहे थे प्रयोग। पता चला वार्ड मेंबर को कुछ पता ही नहीं है, वो मेंबर है, कुछ लोगों को तो ये भी नहीं पता है कि हम मेंबर हैं। कमेटियां क्या होती हैं, कमेटी में क्या होता है, कुछ भी किसी को नहीं। तो ये हुआ कि हमें सबसे पहले फोकस करना चाहिए वार्ड मेंबरों को। हम लोगों ने वार्ड मेंबरों की कुछ ट्रेनिंग को लेकर के ये एक चीज बनी कि वार्ड सभा और वार्ड मेंबर, ये फोकस हुआ। दूसरा लेवल आया, उसको जब करने लगे तो फिर 2021-15 में जब चुनाव हुआ और बाद में जब 21 के बीच का समय आया जिसका अभी उल्लेख कर रहे थे, जब 21 का चुनाव हुआ, हम लोगों ने सोचा था उसी समय 2019 में ये समझ में आया कि ये जो वार्ड मेंबर्स हैं ये सब जगह इनमें वो उस तरह से आए ही नहीं है कि इनकी कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग की जा सके उस लेवल पर इनको तैयार किया जाए। तो ये लगा कि नहीं, इससे पहले हम लोगों को एक काम करना चाहिए, वो न्यू लीडरशिप कैसे पंचायतों के लिए तैयार हो, ये पैरेलल उससे पहले तो ग्रामीण नेतृत्व विकास करके एक पूरे का पूरा कैंपेन शुरू हुआ, ट्रेनिंग शुरू की, गांव-गांव में लीडरशिप की तलाश की जाए और उनको अपने ढंग से इस तरह से प्रशिक्षित किया जाए। तो ग्रामीण नेतृत्व विकास का कार्यक्रम हम लोगों ने शुरू किया उसके साथ। और उसी समय जब चुनाव आया तो चुनाव के बाद ये तय हुआ कि अब इनका विश्लेषण जब करने लगे तो जैसा आया कि जो बता रहे थे कि पूरे उत्तर प्रदेश में 7.5 लाख वार्ड मेंबर हैं। मैं कहता हूं पूरे देश में 28 लाख वार्ड मेंबर हैं, जिसमें 7.5 लाख अकेले उत्तर प्रदेश में है। उसमें से एक बड़ी संख्या 2 लाख तो पद ही खाली रह गए थे जिस पर नहीं आए थे, लेकिन जो 5,50,000 लोग 49,000 समथिंग है, 5,50,000 जो चुने गए थे उसमें चुनाव लड़ा था सिर्फ 1,10,000 लोगों ने। 4,50,000 लोगों ने चुनाव ही नहीं लड़ा था, वहां तो कोई एक कैंडिडेट था, इस तरह से निकल करके आया था। इलेक्शन सिर्फ 1,10,000 में लड़ा और 4,50,000 में कोई इलेक्शन ही नहीं हुआ था, अनअपोज्ड, और 2 लाख में तो कोई कैंडिडेट ही नहीं था। तो लगा कि हम लोग क्या सोच रहे हैं, किस इंस्टीट्यूशन की बात कर रहे हैं, क्या कर रहे हैं, ये तो मतलब कहाँ खड़े हैं। और दिल्ली में बैठ करके प्लान बनता है, जहाँ थे पंचायती राज को लेकर इतने बड़े वो होते हैं जमीन स्तर पर, तो ये सच्चाई है उसकी। उत्तर प्रदेश जैसे राज्य में जो 1/6 होता है, और पंचायती राज में तो और बड़ा हिस्सा उसका बन जाता है। तो क्या पंचायती राज होगा, ये 2021 में बहुत गहराई से समझ में आया। तो कहा कि हम लोगों ने कहा कि चलिए हम लोग एक काम करते हैं, हम वार्ड मेंबरों की ट्रेनिंग का काम शुरू करते हैं, कम से कम इनको ले जाएं। लेकिन ट्रेनिंग कैसे कर सकते थे, कोरोना था उस समय। तो अल्टीमेटली हम लोगों ने कहा कि ऑनलाइन ट्रेनिंग करेंगे। तो व्हाट्सएप ट्रेनिंग का एक वो, क्योंकि उनको तो जूम मीटिंग भी उनके साथ नहीं की जा सकती थी, तो पहले उन्हीं 1,10,000 को ढूंढा कि ये 1,10,000 कौन से है, क्योंकि डाटा सबका मोबाइल नंबर और ये सब सही गलत सब मिल गया था। उसके आधार पर एक टीम लगाई गई और इस काम को शुरू किया गया। 10,000 लोगों को ऑनलाइन किसी तरह ट्रेन किया पिछले दिनों हम लोगों ने ये करके। लेकिन अभी भी जो मैं कह रहा हूँ, ये सारे प्रयोग चल रहे थे वहां, और इधर भी धीरे धीरे ये चीजें होने लगी। अब 3-4 चीजें जो सबसे महत्वपूर्ण निकल के आई, जितनी बात अब मतलब इस सारे अनुभव, इतने सारे अनुभव के करने के बाद, और अभी इस समय लीडरशिप ट्रेनिंग को लेकर के हम लोग रूरल लीडरशिप ट्रेनिंग को लेकर के काम कर रहे हैं। उसके लिए एक अलग पंच परमेश्वर विद्यापीठ करके एक इंस्टीट्यूशन हम लोगों ने शुरू किया है कि उसको, जिसका 2-3 चीजें जो समझ में आई मोटे तौर से। एक तो सही है कि जैसे अभी रघुनंदन जी जहां प्रस्तुत कर रहे थे कि पूरी दुनिया में किस तरह से केंद्रीय सत्ता विकसित होती चली जा रही है, और फिर ऐसे में हम वहां दूसरा टेक्नोलॉजी जिस तरह से आगे जा रही है कि अब दिल्ली में ही बैठ करके हम एक घर की जांच कर सकते हैं, और लोगों के पार्टिसिपेशन को भी टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ या कोई भी काम कर सकते हैं। तो फिर ये लोगों की भागीदारी का क्या सवाल होता है। जो कहा जा रहा है कि पार्टिसिपेशन और पारदर्शिता, 2 शब्दों, ठीक है, टेक्नोलॉजी पारदर्शी तो बना दे रही है, लेकिन पार्टिसिपेशन किस रूप में तय होगा और उसका क्या। क्योंकि एक बैकग्राउंड और था कि हम 2-3 चीजों पर जो दिमाग में समझ में आया। एक तो महात्मा गांधी को पढ़ने के बाद विद्यार्थी जीवन से ही समझ में आया, और विशेषकर जब अंतिम वसीयत पढ़ी तो जिसमें लिखा था देश आजाद हो गया है, लेकिन इस देश के 7 लाख गांव अभी भी गुलाम है। जब तक उन्हें सामाजिक, आर्थिक और नैतिक आजादी नहीं मिलती, इस आजादी का कोई मतलब। तो समझ में आया गांवों की आजादी का क्या मतलब होगा, बहुत सैद्धांतिक तरीके से। तो धीरे धीरे समझ में आजादी का मतलब होता है सोचने की आजादी, निर्णय लेने की आजादी और करने की आजादी। यही असली आजादी है कि गांव अपने बारे में सोच सके, गांव अपने बारे में निर्णय ले सके, और जो निर्णय ले उसको कर सके। इसका मतलब गांव आजाद है। देश तभी आजाद हुआ जब ये 3 चीजें कर सकता था। फिर लगा सरकार क्या होती है, तो सरकार है वही है जिसको अपने क्षेत्र में सोचने का अधिकार है, अपने क्षेत्र में निर्णय लेने का अधिकार है, और अपने क्षेत्र में करने का अधिकार है। तो वो सरकार हो गई। तो ये लगा सरकार और आजादी, ये दोनों चीजें अगर गांव के लेवल पर ले जाना है, गांधी का जो सपना था, अगर ये ले, और 64वें संविधान संशोधन के पीछे का जो बैकग्राउंड था, अगर उसको पढ़िए पूरी तरह से, जो राजीव उस समय के प्राइम मिनिस्टर का जो भाषण है, उस बिल के साथ जो प्रस्तुत करते समय कि जो सत्ता हमने जनता से छीनी है उसे वापस करने का समय आ गया है। ये अंतिम वाक्य था पार्लियामेंट में राजीव। और यही कहा था कि जब कि लोकतंत्र जो दिल्ली और राज्य की राजधानियों में सिमटा है, जब तक वो पंचायत का लोकतंत्र नहीं बनेगा, उस लोकतंत्र का कोई मतलब नहीं होता। तो ये जो आइडियोलॉजी थी, जो समाज को खड़ा करने के लिए थी, और आज की तारीख में जिस तरह से सत्ता केंद्रित होती जा रही है और टेक्नोलॉजी, इन दोनों के बीच का द्वंद्व कहाँ है, जब नीचे खड़े होकर सोचते हैं तो वो हमें तो वो सपना दिखाई पड़ता है हम लोगों को, तो सोच उसी, इसलिए काम और वो अभी उसी दिशा में करने की कोशिश हो रही है। ठीक है, ये संकट हैं, लेकिन इन संकटों के बीच में क्या वो चीजें भूली जा सकती हैं या एक अलग धारा नीचे से ऊपर की तरफ उठ सकती है जो इसके नए बदलाव की ओर ले जा सकती है। और नहीं तो आज नहीं तो कल कभी ना कभी जो बहुत गए उनको भी नीचे से फिर से उठने की बात सोच है। इसी समय अब जो 4-5 काम हम लोग जो जितना समझे और आपके साथ पिछले दिनों से काफी रहा, एक तो ये रहा कि जागरूकता के स्तर पर, प्रशिक्षण के स्तर पर और एडवोकेसी के स्तर पर, 3 स्तर पर समझ में जो आया है ये 3 काम करने की जरूरत है। जागरूकता के स्तर पर निश्चित रूप से वो सारी चीजें आजादी से लेकर के सरकार, लोकल गवर्नमेंट के लेवल से लेकर सर्विस डिलीवरी से लेकर के और जितने इंस्टीट्यूशन है उन सबको लेकर के लोगों के बारे में जागरूक करने की आवश्यकता है। और ये आवश्यकता ऊपर के लेवल कम ग्रासरूट लेवल पर सबसे ज्यादा जरूरी है कि वहां पर हम कितना जागरूक कर सकते हैं। और पंचायत प्रतिनिधियों से भी नीचे जाकर के जिसको हम मतदाता कहते हैं, नागरिक कहते हैं, तो वो जो नागरिकता का सवाल जोड़ा है आपने, ये सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट है। आप देखिए, जन्म से व्यक्ति नागरिक हो जाता है, जैसे पैदा होता है नागरिक हो जाता है, 18 साल में मतदाता बन जाता है, 21 साल में उसको लीडर बनने का मौका मिल जाता है, यही तो है ना प्रोसेस। लेकिन जब नागरिकता ही नहीं शुरू हो पाती ठीक से, उसी की समझ, उसका बोध और उसका व्यवहार, ये तीनों चीजों का बहुत गैप है लोगों के जीवन में, तो वो फिर मतदाता कहां से बनेगा? जैसा मतदाता है वो हम देख रहे हैं, फिर वो जाकर के लीडर कैसे बनेगा? वो पंच, सरपंच या एमएलए और एमपी जिस रूप में बन रहा है। तो नागरिकता का ये सवाल किसी ने उठाया नहीं है, ये बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। शायद गांधी ने इसीलिए कहा था, क्योंकि हम गोखले के इंस्टीट्यूशन का यही कहा था कि प्रथम श्रेणी के लोगों को लोक जागरण के काम में लगना होगा, सत्ता में दूसरे श्रेणी के लोगों को जाना चाहिए। लेकिन सारे प्रथम श्रेणी के लोग उसके बाद सत्ता में चले गए और लोक जागरण के काम में। शायद यही था कि लोकतंत्र में ये नागरिकता जो एक नया रूप मिला था लोगों को दास्ता से मुक्ति के बाद, उसके प्रशिक्षण शायद आज उसकी सबसे बड़ी नीड है एक बार, क्योंकि अगर 75 साल बाद और 100 साल आज़ादी के होंगे और नागरिकता का यही संकट रहेगा तो शायद बहुत, तो हम इसलिए उस लेवल पर आगे जाने की बहुत ज़्यादा उस दिशा में जागरूकता और शिक्षण के लिए जो 3 लेवल पे हम मानते हैं कि 3 लेवल, एक है कि 3 तरह से जो जनता के लेवल पे काम करने की आवश्यकता है, 2 है जो सरकार के लेवल पे काम करने की जरूरत है ऊपर, और तीसरा है एक लेवल है जो पंचायत प्रतिनिधियों के लेवल पर काम। उस तरह से हम लोग काम कर रहे हैं। एक तो जैसे मैंने कहा कि ये है, दूसरा काम कर रहे हैं कि जो कह रहे हैं कि एक ग्रामीण नेतृत्व विकास का काम, वो लीडरशिप का है। और वास्तव में नागरिकता शब्द का, अगर आप सब लोग तो काफी विज्ञ हैं, यूनान के नगर राज्यों से हम उसको, नागरिक शब्द पहली बार वहीं प्रयोग हुआ ईसा से 450 वर्ष पहले, पहली बार ना। और नागरिक उसको कहा गया था नगर राज्यों में जो सत्ता के संचालन में सक्रिय भागीदारी निभाता था। ऐसे सिर्फ 5% लोग होते थे उस समय, तो उनको नागरिक कहा गया था। और वही नागरिकता आज जहां सिर्फ सरकार बनाने में ही नहीं, सरकार चलाने में भी हिस्सेदारी हो, तो लोकल गवर्नमेंट शायद सबसे बेहतर प्लेटफॉर्म है, जहां सरकार बनाता भी है और सरकार चलाता भी है, टेक्नोलॉजी के माध्यम से नहीं, प्रत्यक्ष रूप से, जहां उसकी भागीदारी होती है सीधी। और नागरिक शिक्षण का सबसे बड़ा प्लेटफॉर्म यही हो सकता है, सबसे बड़ा प्लेटफॉर्म यही हो सकता है। तो उस अर्थ में ये जो प्रशिक्षण और लीडरशिप डेवलपमेंट का काम है, उस काम में हम लोग ज्यादा लगे हैं। जो दूसरा जो ये कैंपेन चल रहा है, ये तो है ही है, 2 चीजें और कर रहे हैं। एक शोध का कार्य अभी सुनील जी के लीडरशिप में हम लोगों ने शुरू किया है, अधिनियमों का विशेष करके, जिसमें जो कमियां हैं अलग अलग राज्यों के, उसके आधार पे और विशेषकर उत्तर भारत के जो चूंकि उत्तर भारत और दक्षिण भारत के राज्यों में बहुत अंतर है इस रूप में। अगर देखें, हम जिस राज्य से आते हैं वहां 1000 पर पंचायत बनती है, यहाँ 10,000 की आबादी पर पंचायत बनती है। तो अभी बहुत सारे अनुभव के भी स्तर हैं, बहुत सारी चीजें हैं जो तीसरा ये जो दूसरा महत्वपूर्ण है कि ये जो प्रयोग होगा तो दोनों के लिए चाहिए। पंचायत फेडरेशन इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, जो पंचायत प्रतिनिधियों के लिए है। पंचायत प्रतिनिधियों के संगठन बने हैं, जैसे उत्तर प्रदेश में प्रधान संगठन, वार्ड मेंबर, और वो सब पॉलिटिकली है या तो अपने व्यक्तिगत इंटरेस्ट में है। मानदेय कितना मिल रहा है, हमारी सुविधाएं क्या हैं, हमारे पावर क्या है। पावर तो पंचायत को मिलता है, लेकिन वो समझते हैं हमको ही पावर मिलता है। इंडिविजुअल तो किसी को पावर मिलता नहीं, वहाँ इंस्टीट्यूशन को मिलता है, संविधान ने दिया है इसको। इसलिए जो थर्ड है पंचायत फेडरेशन, वो पंचायत प्रतिनिधियों का है, पंचायत फेडरेशन। तो ये कुछ चीजें हैं, अगर कर सकें, अगर इन पर, और यही काम हम लोग इस समय जमीनी स्तर पर कर रहे हैं। और एक बिल्कुल, और ऐसा नहीं कि जब शुरू किए थे तो ये सारा प्लान था। जैसे मैं कह रहा हूं, एक काम करते करते जो समझ बनी, अगला रास्ता दिखाई पड़ा तो उसको शुरू कर दिया। हमेशा ओपन रहा, क्योंकि कहीं से कोई फंड और इस पर कम से कम हो रही कि प्लान्ड वे में चले, उनको प्रपोजल दीजिए, जो कहें वही करें। जो करते गए उसमें किसी ने सहयोग कर दिया सामान्य रूप से, तो ठीक है, वो ले लिया सस्ता है। ये रहा कुल मिला करके जो एक्सपीरियंस है।
Thank you. Last comment and, yeah, please.
First of all, thank you for this one. In fact, it is actually almost 9 to 10 years since I attended a program like this where we have this kind of interaction about Panchayati Raj. But all other things by the ministry and all it happens, but this kind of an interaction, it's almost after 10 years. Okay. And we Keralites usually have contempt for everything which we do. And then when we move outside as Mallus, we have contempt as well as appreciation kind of thing. So I also lived outside Kerala for almost 1.5 decades. So I think I can also do some sort of balancing act here. But the thing is, a few years back or 1 decade back or so, because many panchayat leaders and others come to Kerala and visit all the panchayats, and then when they come back and then tell us, oh, it's all great, but we can't do it in our place. But my experience and personally if I talk, I would say every state in India, we have a few panchayats who have done great things without all the support the Kerala panchayats have got. Whether it is money, whether it is functions, whether it is functionaries. So which means there is still potential in Panchayati Raj, but I see potential in panchayats and panchayat leaders. This is how I think, because all innovations have happened outside Kerala recently. But individual panchayats, so there is no, it takes time to get it, and also there is no support. They all work without support. That's the main thing. So I have a lot of confidence in this system. Of course, there are issues and other things which are there. The point number one, because I will just, one sentence and I will finish it, I think I can. One, there are no champions. That is the present situation. There are no champions for Panchayat Raj at the moment, and that way this meeting is actually a great thing for me. But champions have to change also. That has been our undoing, because champions remained as champions and no new champions came in by default or whatever I know. That is one thing. Second one, when we discuss all these things, we need to have trust in local leaders, trust in local people, trust in panchayats. The problem I have seen is that even when we vote for Panchayati Raj and decentralization, we don't have the trust in local leadership and panchayats. That is why we have this great guidelines coming up with all kinds of things. Every other year it goes big and big and big kind of thing. That's the issue. So we are not ready to give any support, that's because of the lack of support. Even though we actually vote for all this decentralization, when it comes to the decentralization up to my level, I'm not beyond. Third is actually, I am happy to see this multi-level, because the session is on multi-level governance structure, and that's again the third one. We have already been talking about decentralization, but we are actually talking about multi-level governance and multi-level planning and multi-level administration. So that is the way we need to look at things, where probably the principle of subsidiarity comes in first. And that's very difficult, because the principle of subsidiarity, if you adhere to that, a lot of things have to change. We are not going to accept that, but still, if you have that principle, so now I actually start remembering the Sun Committee recommendations of the 97, 98 in Kerala, where there was this 8 principles on which this was tried to be built. One is the subsidiarity principle, the role clarity, the complementarity, these tier and others, how you complement, and then the supplementarity, how you add things, and then the accountability part of it, and participation, of course, and then I think integration, and then convergence. All these words are still there everywhere, but I think these were the principles on which, and I think these are still relevant, I think. Because, but then there we need to also think about, that is the 5th one I think I wanted to say, is that also think about right from the union government to the panchayat, the role clarity has to be there. Just like we have the concurrent list and the state list and others, we also need to have a panchayat list or something. Need not be as part of the constitution, at least in states, within the state at least some sort of. That is where we tried for this mapping, accountability mapping, responsibility mapping and other things, which never materialized anywhere in the country. So, but still it is relevant. That is where the roundtables actually had contributed to such ideas. That's the 6th one is actually, I see the role of panchayats far too different from the roles of the state government or the union government. A panchayat leader, it's not about working on specified listed items. Sometimes they just promote certain things. Sometimes they actually facilitate certain things. Sometimes actually they mobilize people for something. So for example, your immunization. They are not going to do anything, but they mobilize people for that. Sometimes they lead from the front. Sometimes they actually plan. Sometimes they plan and implement, and all kinds of things. So their roles are totally different from the typical conventional way of our way of looking at things, where things are different, and that is why even when powers are not there, they still do certain things because that is part of it. So for example, the case of disaster management, the NDMA and the whole act actually doesn't give any role for the local governments, though it is mentioned, because it is all centralized kind of thing, because it's a warlike situation where we have to act as if in a war, where we have to have a coordinated effort, where there is only one leader and one this thing and all. That's correct. In a disaster, that is a correct warlike situation. But on the other hand, if you look at things, who is the first respondent? It's the local people. Who knows the people? Who knows the place? It's the local people. So we need to have a balance of all these things. So that is where there have to be certain changes which happens. The 7th or 8th point is actually the agency function. I am not totally against the agency function, but also we need to treat them as local government. So there is a local government as such, where local governments also have agency function. I mean, we don't have to be very romanticizing all these things as local government, which is not an agency function at all. I feel that they will also do the agency function, but they will have that, but they should be respected and accepted as a government, local government, so that this agency function is taken care of, because that is how it is. So it is not deconcentration where we are just putting things and you do kind of thing. It is actually devolution and other things. In this case, schedules have to be relooked. I mean, I find that because we all talk about this 29 subjects and 18 for the urban, but what is the real situation? And some of them are actually redundant in many states for the local governments. So we need to have a relook at this, or we keep that same thing, but don't expect the panchayats to do everything what is talked about. There are things which have to be changed. Probably at the state level, we need to have a look at it. And the next is about the district government. We can't go back to the district government, but the real issue of the local government functioning in the states and in the districts is actually there is no district government where the district administration comes in, and so naturally there is coordination issues. But there is another institution called the DPC, District Planning Committee. It's actually like the stillborn kind of thing. So there, actually it is already there in the constitution, but so we actually know, if you read the DPC, this thing, it is too vague. It is given on the 74th Amendment, so the Panchayat Raj cannot look into it. All kinds of problems are there. And if you look at the DPC guidelines, I mean, whatever it's written in the Constitution, and the Metropolitan Planning Committee, it's all the same. literally the DPC is changed into Metropolitan Planning Committee. And that is how the constitution has been decided. I mean, if I...
It's actually a small difference. It's a significant difference. The MPC mandates in the provision that even union government institutions will have to be part of the MPC, which is significant because if you take a city like Bangalore, the biggest landowners in Bangalore are union government entities, the army, the railways and the air force, and they can come in through the MPC to be part of the spatial planning process.
Yeah, but I mean what I was trying to say is that if you look at the words written otherwise, it's all the same functions given MPC and the DPC. But we can actually still work with the same thing. But DPC can be strengthened even within the present constitution if you want to have this. But there again, there are also practical issues which I say. And then, because I think the next session, I think it won't really happen as such as it is. But I will actually say about I will mix that also here. That's about the OSR, own source revenue. Unless we actually really have a great effort in OSR, own source revenue, the panchayats will remain as it is like this. But then the OSR, when we all discuss, we think about, panchayat should mobilize resources from that and this and other things. That is the way we talk. I am actually talking about how the panchayat should be given the responsibility and ownership of collecting taxes, collecting revenue and other things also. It is otherwise it is like saying that we have devolved everything, so you start collecting your own thing, but we will collect the taxes. But there the shared taxes also becomes very important. Probably you all would say shared taxes will become very important. That is where your committee actually, commission has suggested that. So shared means in different ways. I'm just taking that. And there, what is the situation of the SFCs? State Finance Commission. We are talking about the Union Finance Commission. What is the status of the State Finance Commission? In most of the states, it is just an institution for the sake of the institution. Even now, there are states which are just into the third SFCs and even first, okay, and that's the situation. And this is also mandatory as per the constitution. That's a situation. And of course, this viable size of the panchayat, I think it should be left to the states to actually decide on it, depending on the states. But then there is also the issue of resources, sir said rightly, because if you actually divide or make it smaller, then the infrastructure facilities, because I know that we have actually created municipalities, 28 municipalities some 15 years back or something. They are now not a panchayat, not a town, nothing is there. It all remains the same because the infrastructure, facilities, staff and all of this, it never happens in the state for next 20 years, I know. But then viable size becomes an important question which needs to be considered, but leave it to the states. But the real issue is actually about human resources. See, when you are talking about GPDP, you are talking about this much money have been transferred, you are talking about this much schemes have been transferred to the panchayats and all. Who is going to do it? When a single officer is there for 5 panchayats or 4 panchayats or 3 panchayats, and even your data, your all those kinds of communication, who is actually really doing it? Nowadays I don't have that exposure to the other states, but I am actually not sure really what is happening because the kind of work which our panchayats are doing for all this data and other things, and with all 25-30 people and other things, and then I am actually seeing, UP has also done, Bihar has also done all these things. They have uploaded everything. How did they do it? I don't know. Within this short span of time, without HR, and I am actually I don't understand how it is, and also since we've moved into that, there's also the data issue. See, the panchayats are providing data, whichever way it is, but no data comes back. So, for example, the Mission Antyodaya data, it goes that side. The panchayats or the people cannot view it. The secretary might be given a password sometime, some long years back or something like that. he or she has forgotten forever, and then because they are not supposed to use it, so they don't use it. So and now what is happening is, sir, is like that now that we have gone into the Panchayat Development Index, and then there are also this provision of all this already uploaded data which automatically comes in, and only the panchayats have to put in the other data, the new data, and then what the panchayats find is that whatever has been given as their data, they're saying that, oh no, this is not our child kind of thing. Because absolutely nonsense, because the departments have uploaded to the ministries, concerned ministries, and then this is auto-ported to the panchayat, and then you find that this panchayat doesn't belong to me kind of situation.
No.
Panchayat Development Index. It's a great work which is happening.
In fact, this is what we wanted the people to realize. What is being fed by different departments, ministries from the ground level, and it is reflected in the dashboards, and everyone takes pride whether it is women and child development, whether it is any department. That data, we said we will not, the moment we would have said we will do, they'll said no, all this data is conflicting, ours is the real, we have reported it to Parliament, how can we change it, go back, all those issues would have come. We said whatever is there with the department or ministry, let it get reflected against the panchayats. And because every panchayat has an LGD code, so it was possible to do that work. Now once that got reflected, that has gone back to the panchayat. You examine it, this is the report which is getting reflected. And as in government we know once something wrong figure has been reported, no one will ever, even if they'll find out it is wrong, no one will take the trouble to, they'll say we have already reported it to Parliament, we have reported it to Assembly, how can we go back? I'll be answerable. So all that data, and now that in this exercise, that is coming out.
Yes.
Now once it comes out, let's see for how long government, whether it is state government or union government, you can continue with this facade. And that is where the role of academic institutions become very important. These things you have to take it up. It should not be left to governments. Otherwise there's that conflict of interest. I am the implementer, I am the spender, and I am also the reporter. And then I will choose what will be presented before the appropriate authority. And then everyone will accept that. So this is the real challenge in data, sir. And second, sir, this data ownership. Everything is coming from them. Today, as a country, we are saying, because this data has been generated in India, we are the sovereign owners of this. Google or Microsoft or anyone cannot do that. Tomorrow there will be monetization of data. Who will own that data? Just because someone has collected it, he becomes the de facto owner, Government of India becomes the de facto owner, and no state government, no panchayat will have any share in that. So at least recognize that value, that from where the data is being generated, they should at least have some share, some future point of time when that data gets monetized. Otherwise you will find everyone else owning that data, but from where it is being generated, they will not be there. So these issues will need to be addressed. And as was being pointed out by Shekhar, the quality of data. Work out a system which also becomes a sort of employment generating year for trained youth in every panchayat.
Okay. So very quickly, but only good thing is that this PDA, Panchayat Development Index exercise, actually brought out this issue, and also this transparency, how it actually matters in data. Even if it is at minimum transparency with regard to the panchayats, this happens.
So, a couple of points, and in specific to what PIC and the Gokhale Institute's mandate could be. And we have discussed in many ways the issue of domain legitimacy of Gram Panchayats. This is a question that I guess we need to reflect more carefully, given that we have low citizen participation, the kind of data that was shared about UP, or the role of ward members, or the role of sarpanches, I think we need to carefully examine that in context of India and in context of whatever devolutions we have done. The second we need to do, and you did flag the issue of non-coterminous political, administrative, social. And social, I am including things like education, which you have, for example, CRC is the unit, ICDS you have a center, health you have a CSC. None of them are coterminous. Just imagine the life of a rural citizen if he has to, only one household. They have to go through all this. And congruence of some LGD seeding has brought in some data. And I think we need to explore this, not in isolation. We have to explore this in the context of the rural citizen or the rural household. How does she engage with this entirety of what we have created? And we have created before independence, post-independence, and we have continued. And my suggestion there was, while we will coexist, 100,000 and 1,000 panchayats will coexist, but there is a typology, and that typology in some ways is reflected in PISA and 6th schedule. The typology is one of the starting social endowments and the human development. And if we were to look at that typology, you will find there is a reason for difference between Kerala and Jharkhand. Kerala, and whatever numbers you put it, 1/5 of Jharkhand is Kerala and 0.5 of UP is Kerala. And there is a reason for that to be accommodated in terms of their historical evolution of social and human development endowments. So that is one exercise. If we do, that would be useful. The second exercise we can do is the compatibility of the laws. Just see two laws, and I've been looking at this more carefully, PRA, FRA and panchayats. They don't talk to each other. And now there are some other laws also are like that. They don't talk to each other. I guess it is reflective, not just the capacities at the front line, capacities of the legal departments of the union government and the state government are extremely poor. And because of that, these kinds of contradictions, maybe bureaucratically, deliberately it has been put there, but there is a challenge there. The second thing that is a challenge is you don't translate it into rules and procedures. And you see, for example, we are talking of what to be devolved. I was pleasantly surprised in Assam. There is something called a statutory council, and they have devolved 34 items. Why 29? They have done 34. But what happens? It is there in the files in the Guwahati office only. It doesn't go outside Guwahati. So, if we were to examine this across the country, across the typologies, the compatibility of the laws, and why rules and procedures have not been enacted, you will realize it would have solved many things. Simple procedural issues can solve many things. The competence doesn't exist in the government to build those procedures, sir. So this is another issue that, Gokhale Institute could examine. Now, I will tell you, sir, about our experience. And that is another thing that, you could do. So today, sir, as you pointed out, you did the CSS exercise. Obviously, much water has flowed. Institutional memory, we know you have that reservoir. But as citizens also, we don't have institutional memory. And neither the government has. It is reflective of us as citizens. We are, sir, today involved with multiple programs of the government. One is Mission Antyodaya, we talked about it. There is another program, GPDP, we are involved with it. GPDP integration with VPRP, we are involved. Aspirational district program and now aspirational block program, we are involved. What we have learnt on this, and we very closely work with the Ministry of Panchayat and Ministry of Rural Development, the Union Government, and also in 4 states. These are East and Central India. And we have applied all these things that we have talked about. What we have realized after this experience, sir, is whatever, what's and all, if this is the given, you just take that as a given. While you do put in efforts to change law and bring in fiscal devolution and you know how the political economy will react to that. Within this, what can be done? I'll tell you, we did few things, and with few panchayats. We used the template of Mission Antyodaya, and later on we became so enamored of it, we are involved with the design of the instrument and the survey that has been done by RD. Our team there works on that. And we did create variety of indexes around it, and it is a problem, as Sunil sir was saying, problem that departments don't agree. Whatever, if they have given a garbage, they will have to defend the garbage, whatever manner you want to like, not like. What we realized is, at the panchayat level, we just furnished the information. We worked with the line departments. Again, either way you talk, this remains with the line department except Kerala and maybe a little bit in Karnataka. Today, in Madhya Pradesh, you have 3 statutory bodies at the panchayat level and 22 different kind of committees like SMC, VHC, line departments have created these 22 committees. So we did exercise, and exactly sir, as you said, where panchayats could fit into this, where the sarpanch could fit in, where the ward member could fit in, and where the secretary could fit in. And we find it does, and after all, answering the question of domain legitimacy, what do people perceive? Deliver development, and that would be in the form of my economic gains or entitlement access or little bit of a school improvement. These are things that I can, whatever manner you want to talk of citizenship, that's another side of it. But here I can feel that, and then it leads to participation. And so much so that because we used, and again, this is another thing that the institute could academically and examine, what is the role of associations in building such institutions of local governments or act as a countervail to the larger autocratic and centralizing tendencies of the state. Our understanding is, and having worked for 3 decades on this with the women collectives, we have an enormously powerful organizational, and as Tocqueville talked about the associational life, you see, democracy without associational life cannot exist. And whenever we talk of representation, and that's why I'm not enamored of panchayat, federation. It is representation. It will represent the power elite structure, and it will only do that. You just can't. You see, the power of a direct engagement doesn't exist in indirect or representational forms, and that's what exists at the local panchayat level. If we can strengthen that, subsequently other things can be strengthened. So the elite capture or whatever manner the capture happens because the fundamental things has not been done. It is possible to do that with this association of women collectives which sit face to face, and association life is there. So I will tell you, and this is not one or few panchayats, as you rightly said, few panchayats here and there, actually they prove that the thing is not working. The exceptions don't prove that it is working. We did this exercise with 8 blocks. And that is roughly about 150 odd gram panchayats. And in this last election, sir, you are familiar with MP, sir, and these are all tribal areas, western, sir, east MP, sir. Bhavani is one, and then on this side, Bhavani, Jhabua, Alirajpur, and the other side, sir, we are present in Dharmanath, all the tribal areas there, sir. We found a very interesting data, sir, and that is where I say you have a mandate. The 73rd Amendment has a transformative mandate on reserving seats for women. The question to ask is how many women fight on non-reserved seats and win on non-reserved seats. The data from these, sir, and these are 8 blocks, and these are tribal blocks, and everywhere, unlike UP, they fought elections there, 1/3 of the non-reserved seats were won by women, sir. This is more than 14% that you have in parliament, and it is very close to what Germany has, about 35% in the local government, the women representation. And this is without affirmation. So what processes we did there, sir? We focused on citizenship education, and we said that the citizenship education and understanding what it means for me to be a citizen, what it means for me to participate in Gram Sabha or vote in a Gram Panchayat or hold my sarpanch to account is a function of my understanding of the democratic republican polity, the constitution, and we deliberately did at what is called a village organization. It is a collection of SSGs at the village level. We created you could say a community resource. We call them change vectors around governance. We systematically did that, 360-degree, one with the citizens, the other with the elected representatives, the third with the functionaries, the fourth with the ward members and the subsequent.
Yeah. Clarification. You did this exercise as a consequence of which those
Yes.
non-reserved
Yes.
seats women won?
Yes.
Okay.
Over a period of time, sir. The most important thing, sir, we realized, their participation in Gram Sabha increased, sir, and Gram Sabha exists in absence in India. And they exist in absence, particularly in North India. I will not speak about the southern states. It exists in absence because after all, you rightly pointed out, it is flowing, 15 crore is flowing, but they handle only 15 lakhs. Why should a ward member know what he is supposed to do? Why should he know or she know? There is absolutely no reason. No, he must be a fool to know that. This is not a club. That's why they don't know, and that's why they don't want to fight. So how do you bestow power there? And this we did through the exercise of GPTP, and in some way GPTP does accommodate those exercises which were done then, and it does little bit of that. Obviously, institutional memory has also has a telescopic way of doing it. But when you start looking at the small wins possible within the givens also, there would be many learnings there, sir. The citizenship education, the same planning process, and then we created an institutional, you rightly pointed out, without institutional structure, none of this follow-up will happen. This is, again, it was provided in the guidelines, it existed earlier also, block level coordination committee. Long back, UNICEF did this, called a convergent, community-based convergence system reform, done 30 years back. And this was part of the Mission Antyodaya guidelines. We used that guideline to create BLCC, we got the line departments, the CO Janpad, the DPM of the NRLM, sit and review plan, and we digitized. The whole plan itself, GPDP, was digitized, and a monthly review of that plan was digitally available to the women. And they could go and engage with the ward member and with the sarpanch to track the progress, and they together could then participate in the VHSC and the SMC. If the boundary wall of the SMC or a functional girl toilet was not there, they could have that conversation. Because if we don't provide that agenda for conversation, obviously there is nothing, and just because you have become a ward member doesn't mean anything. So if we examine, and these innovations are happening across, if we build them across the typologies, there could be much to learn. Obviously there are other things that we should do, but we should also focus on within what exists, it is possible. But ask the question, why should panchayats exist? And there has to be a answer which instrumentalizes my citizenship. So for example, I may have a reason to vote for a parliamentary election, but I may not have a reason to vote for MCD in the place I stay in Delhi. So what is the instrumentality of me participating in the local governance process? There has to be an answer which, at least I get. There has to be a, return on my investment. And that's another question that you could examine, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Many of the points in the second session have also come up in the discussion we've had so far. And I would just like to say a few words about where we are all coming from, especially Sunil and I, when we wrote this paper. In our years in government service, most of the time we found we were implementing centrally sponsored programs. And we found that there was a distinct absence of people's participation in the programs that we were implementing, which were meant to benefit the citizenry, whether rural or urban. So a lifetime in government of implementing centrally sponsored schemes, and when you went right down to the basic level of how beneficiaries are selected and how the program works, we found very little actual people's participation. Even the Gram Sabha is notionally supposed to give a list of beneficiaries. Whether in fact they were the actual beneficiaries agreed upon by the village at large is again something we would never find out. Because the government staff deployed, the panchayat secretary and others, all the way up, the block level staff, the district staff, everybody looks at it through a certain prism. And therefore I think if we are to talk about local government, people's participation, accountability, transparency, then we need to reimagine and redefine some of the basic ideas about what is democratic participation and what we mean when we talk about people's elected representatives working at the local level. Now, obviously, this throws up a whole lot of issues which are very difficult to address, leave alone, to identify, leave alone to address. So some of the discussion which has happened has thrown up a lot of pointers, I think, in the context of capacity building, resource requirements and political economy. I would really like to thank Mr. Raghunandan for bringing out a lot of things which were very interesting for me personally. For example, in capacity building, and as Professor Apte also pointed out, that if we really talk about the opening up of the rural economy, you will have a whole new set of challenges and you possibly need a different kind of staff even to address how government is going to look at some of those economic challenges. So the kind of recruitment rules, for example, that we have to recruit staff, if we are to staff that work, then I think that's a very interesting indication of how we need to think completely out of the box when we are talking about capacity building of panchayats, and not think in terms of transferring people, maybe existing staff from existing government departments to panchayats if they are to be given more functions. So this was one aspect, sir. The other thing I would like to mention that, which was also talked about, Sir said that can we make recommendations on administrative changes as opposed to constitutional or legal changes. So I think from the point of view of political economy, that's very interesting, because a lot of things which will emanate from any discussion on what should be local government might not be acceptable to the political economy as it is now. So can we begin piecemeal, or can we take baby steps to ensure local government, and why kind of research as to what would be administrative changes that we could recommend which might be acceptable to the political economy as opposed to, or vis-a-vis constitutional changes which might be threatening the very existing status quo. Then from the point of view of looking at resource requirements, from the UP experience, we know that if you are to increase the financial resources available to gram panchayats, many of them don't know how to spend the existing resources that they have. And the kind of planning that we are talking about, I would like to say, in my opinion, it's largely notional. There is very little actual participatory planning which happens. So can the village persons of the Gram Sabha get together, identify issues which might be important to them which they need to work on? What has happened is they're all acting as agents of the central government and state governments through centrally sponsored schemes, and that has become their priority. There's no real thinking going into what a particular village might want, which might be quite different from what another panchayat might be advocating. Also, when it comes to participation, we need to look at women's participation. And you made the important point that there, thanks to your efforts, there have been women who have been elected to non-reserved seats. I think that's a tremendous step forward. But we don't really, so far in government thinking, we've always talked about women as a collective entity. Why should women be looked on as a collective entity? The individual rights of women matter. And this self-help groups and women's collectives, we never talk about men's collectives. When it comes to entrepreneurship, I was in skill development, we talked about skill development and we push women into self-employment. Nobody talks about wage employment for women, because that would entail the government making sure that public spaces are safe for women, which no government will undertake. So just push women into self-employment. Never mind that self-employment rarely works, because they are not up to scratch to begin any kind of employment. So similarly, women's collectives, organize women as a group, credit will be made available to women as a group. That's not women's participation by any means. That needs to be relooked at, and maybe if we have research papers looking at what is the actual participation of women in, say, standing committees, where have women actually spoken and on what issues in Gram Sabha meetings or Gram Panchayat meetings, what follow-up action has been there, even a sociological research into the background of the women who speak. Are they women who are propped up because of their predominant caste background or because their husbands have been in politics or the bureaucracy or anything? Or is it genuinely women who have been educated themselves and have come up with something? So qualitative analysis is needed here regarding participation of women. So these are some of the things I think which could be discussed, and two more points. One is what Professor Apte mentioned about the rural economy. So when we talk about skills, for example, there's a huge area of the rural economy and a market demand which has not even been generated, so you cannot take it into account. So this is where, if you actually have people's participation in functioning panchayats, what are the economic needs of rural people which require specific kind of skill training? That could also be looked at. And what Dr. Pran mentioned, very, very important, that people need to know and people need to be aware of what their lives are all about and what participation in their own governance means. So for that to happen, if we have a central information commission and we have state information commissions, but if right to information has to be made general, then why not think in terms of an information commission at the level of local government? Because there are so many issues on which local people need to be informed, where money is spent, where it comes from, where it goes. So even that could be thought of, though again that is something which might need certain changes. But these are some ideas which could also be I think there's a lot of learning there, because if people who are thinking and working and getting together and sharing experiences on a level or a plane which is not just bound by what the government is doing through its programs, I think there's a lot of learning which can come from that. And this experience sharing, and sir, as you had mentioned, maybe we could also have a research paper on learning from other states. So if some states have got this kind of non-government action by people's the discussion is invited.
So two and a very quick points. And so this is, this is a study. It is not just our organization, but it is a study. It is a large program on deepening local democracy by Ajim Premji Foundation. We are their partners in Madhya Pradesh, and there are other partners like FES in other states, and everywhere, and this result were visible. In our case, actually, if you would know, Rasmi Shukla Sharma, she was additional secretary in the panchayat. She did that assessment where she found how women collectives, and you are right in why should men don't collectivize, why should women collectivize. And there could be, it's a different point, and there are other researches showing how these collectivization efforts and this whole issue of social identity leading to enhancement in agency, freedom and efficacy happens. There is a whole research around that. We could bilaterally discuss that. But this study did show two things. The participation data that I shared, the other data that it shared, and it is in the case of MP. Sir, GPDP has been going for some time, and I don't know across the states, but in MP, sir, the translation was 12 to 13%, sir, the plans. And naturally there is a plan fatigue, and the plans are made by the Sarpanch and the ward member, and as you rightly pointed out, data entry operator is the most significant fellow, because that fellow has to do the plan plus entry, and if that fellow is not there, the entry doesn't happen. But if you start systematically working with it, and this is evidence from all these 8 blocks, and it is there on the Gram Swaraj portal, 2 indicators, sir, and which is where, for example, when you look at a corporate, what would you look at? You would look at their net worth to know After all, top line, bottom line, and all of this can go anywhere. But if there is a stake in the business, you would look at net worth. Here you look at two things, sir. One is what you have a line item called zero budget plans. In some ways, it would also mean the activities that Panchayat had decided to do it on its own. That data is available across all our panchayats. Just look at that, it is in single digits only. Single digit panchayats have made zero budget plans. Why? Because there is no, the planning process doesn't accommodate that. There is a plan fatigue. Panchayats do not think that they have the agency. I'm not saying agency in the other sense. I'm saying agency in the sense of they're feeling instrumental for their own actions. But in these, and again I say for these 8 blocks because we intensively engaged and we saw that experience both in UP and Jharkhand also where we started engaging, this increased. Today this is 82% and some on the paper I have shared. Year after year, the plan to translation data increased, mind you from 13% to 82%, 60, 78, 82%. And this leads to, because there is absolutely no magic in my participation. If my participation yield results, I will participate again. I mean, just like, if I get money, I will return if I have a promise of another money. And that's what then we learn in credit. That's the standard behavior. If the plans don't get translated, no one will come for planning. And they should not come. It is a waste of their efforts. It is good that they sit at home and maybe play cards. It is better that way. At least leisure is there. So here we have to look at these two things. We will learn more. There is another data study done for NRLM groups, and mind you today, you remove these very large villages, census towns. So today 60%, and that is about close to 11 crore. Again, you can remove the numbers, these are government numbers, so you will have to do discount that, but still 60% of rural households through the women are part of these women collectives. And that has been there, progressively growing, and mind you 60%. And this is 707 rural districts. It is enormous power to mobilize because you do not have anything else. For example, in Gram Sabha, 150 people come together because the way we Indians are, it will always be only a mob. It cannot be any kind of a deliberative engagement cannot happen in 150 people. Either one fellow will speak, the other will listen, or it will be a mob. So where do you learn? And this is again, lot of literature is around that, and that's where, if you look at SHGs as the learning ground for citizenship, learning democratic engagement, not in the sense of the way we put it, why they should collectivize, but yeah, anyone could. And then you have in the Gram Sabha a mobilized group of, say 40, 50 people have mobilized, forget they are men or women, but they are mobilized in some way or the other. They will make the Gram Sabha effective, and there is again evidences around that. And that is the power we should look at that exists today. And we should look at the programs that exist today. If we keep looking at the rear view, you see problems of today and tomorrow. And mind you, even in the rural economy it is opening up. But you see how differentially it is opening up across India. What is opening in Kerala is very different from what is opening in Bihar. Bihar, nothing is opening. I come from Bihar. There is no opening, all closed. They are going to Coimbatore has now Hindi is the lingua franca of Coimbatore, this Tirupur, where the hosiery is. So Jharkhand and Bihar are the largest labor force contributor there. So they are going there. That's what migration will do. Stop here, sir.
Underscore the point about building up panchayat organizational capacities at the Gram Panchayat level. I am an advocate for considering the reality that panchayat ward members are now quasi-executives. And I speak with knowledge of Karnataka. In Karnataka, what we are seeing now is with the political desire to give guarantees to people. In fact, the current political dispensation came to power on the strength of giving 4 guarantees. That involves a considerable sum of money, either in terms of subsidies, denial of taxes or whatever. Plus the fact is that Karnataka is not getting enough devolution. There is some strength in the statement of the CM that we are, for what the taxes that we contribute to the union government, we are not getting a share. These 2 reasons have led to the budget being squeezed. What is the So there is a progressive increase in the number of vacancies at the ground level. So willy-nilly, today, there is devolution by default. Because departments are unable to provide staff at the local level, there is a administrative vacuum. This vacuum is being filled up by the panchayat members, sometimes because the government issues a directive saying that panchayat will do this and panchayat will do that. And there are no animal husbandry staff at the ground, animal census will be done by the panchayat secretary. The panchayat member will grumble and go and get it done. This is number one. Number two, the populations are now becoming very aware of service dysfunctionalities. If the water supply doesn't come, or if the street light doesn't function, the panchayat member is the one in the hot seat. So she has to go borrow money, buy the bulb or repair the tap and then get it reimbursed. So my point is, better to recognize this reality. Let this system not be run through an informal means of chanda, because if you legitimize or if you turn your face away from the inevitable corruption that is keeping the system alive, it will snowball into a major corruption issue. Because using that excuse, even though a panchayat member may need only 10 rupees or 20,000 rupees, he will take 50,000 rupees. So instead of that, recognize this, that there is an administrative cost, bear it through this process. Then what happens is, what is the kind of training or capacity building that is to be done? It has to be peer-to-peer learning, because I find that SIRDs are just languishing. This is talking down to people, the content is tired, everybody goes through the motions of doing it, the panchayat members get up in between and walk away, it's all fudged, and then everybody comes and collects a TA and buzzes off. It's just of no great use. Now as far as the associations are concerned, I see your point. My point is that everybody is an authoritarian waiting to germinate. So my question is personal, this is a personal decision. Which authoritarian will I want to work with? Would I work with the Gram Sabha authoritarian or the Panchayat member association member? I somehow decided to work with the association because we are talking about 1,10,000 authoritarians, potential authoritarians. It's a number I feel I can handle, right? The Gram Sabha becomes too fuzzy, and there's no great hope that if I work with the Gram Sabha, I'll only work with saints. So that's a personal choice. I also took this personal choice because nobody else is working at that level, right? Absolutely. Everybody is working with the government, or everybody is a grassroots level anarchist working who distress every level above them as you know, exploiting government, and so work with the people. So ये पंचायत member का हालत क्या होता है? Gets caught between an indifferent government and an increasingly aggressive population. तो उनको कौन देख रहा है? मैं उनके साथ काम कर रहा हूँ. That's a personal choice. But I understand. They are very much
one point
very messy.
Sort of giving members of any type, Gram Panchayat, executive powers, which in fact this will, is where there are long periods of the same government. This has always led to exclusion of a sizable population. That is the only worry I have there. Otherwise, of course, it is recognizing a reality.
The moment we have this, and there is a reason why it is panchayat, only 5 people took, and Athenian democracy also like that. Here also only 5 people, elite. And that's how. First it is autocracy and then only it can go to people. So to that extent I fully agree. It is our choice of the autocrats that we want to work with, and they do balance. And Montesquieu's work is all around that. And how do the balance of power and that happens there. But the point is, as a citizen, how do I learn to be a citizen? What is my role and responsibility as a citizen? How do I hold my duty bearers to account? Where do I learn this? There is no other space for me to learn that.
Sir, a couple of points on capacity development only. I mean, where one is actually first thing we need to do is actually develop the capacity of the capacity developing institution. I think that is the worst, in a different way I'm saying, because they don't have that capacity as of now because of various historical and other reasons, institutional reasons also. But otherwise I would have found at least 5 persons from SIRDs in this meeting. At least 5 faculty members from SIRDs in this meeting, because they have been working on Panchayati Raj for the last 25 years, and they would have been the best people who could have actually brought in all these ideas, which is not there in the country. You can understand what is the capacity of our capacity development institutions for specifically for rural development in Panchayati Raj. That's the first thing. Second one, see, specifically we have a couple of good examples, as you said. We have now the Panchayat learning centers, which is actually created. And I found that because selected Panchayats, beacon, so-called beacon or whatever name you call, they actually provided training to the other Panchayats. Fantastic. We purposely did not intervene at all. We didn't even say how the module should be and all. Left it to them. And only in a few places I went just to have the kind of responses, feedback from both the sides. Both the sides. Because, and also a camaraderie which had developed out of that. That was self-funded. This actually we provided funds. Yeah.
They pay for the accommodation.
I know. So that was actually because earlier you might remember we also had this program on Panchayat to Panchayat where we had twinning of Panchayats. You actually inaugurated that long time back. Now it is not there. Where Panchayat from other states get twinned with a Panchayat in Kerala kind of thing. At least 10 states were involved, a few locations. And still I sometimes hear from people saying, so we had actually gone to that Panchayat and from there we brought it, especially so that's
Switzerland. If you go to local governments, you will invariably see a board. That this is twinned with some other, in some other country actually.
And so with regard to HR, that is the last point. HR.
You will attract FCRA got those.
Sir, with regard to HR, one point which sir would also know. See, sir, your report actually talked about a lot of HR things. Now we have actually tried to rework on it because that was a long time back, but that has been the best kind of thing. And from there, can't we ask the Central Finance Commission, because in various other sectors like education, health and other things, there are HR contributions from the CFC itself. If we are actually putting this much crores into Panchayati Raj and local governments, why can't we have a portion of that for the HR part also, which should be actually compensated? The state also should bear it so that some system actually gets minimum, at least certain minimum levels of HR should be there in all the panchayats, kind of thing.
In fact, sir, just one point which I would like to make here is all this talk of this is to be spent on development. Now, what exactly development means, that no one knows. And in whole of North India, it's only brick, cement, mortar. That is CC roads. Earlier you had brick paved roads, now you have CC roads, and you keep doing it. And that too in certain tolas, even after 30 years, in that village, in that panchayat, there would be certain SC dominated area which will be bereft of that. And all conditions put, this will be spent only, you can't spend more than 10% on administrative cost. And now the whole right now, and the department is not concerned with maintaining any asset which has been created in the Gram Panchayat. Now ownership of that, the land has been taken from the Gram Sabha, passed on to the concerned education department, animal husbandry, whoever. It's now in the name of that department. The Gram Panchayat has no role or right over that, and whatever asset was created, one-time asset, it was never maintained. Right now it is a no one's baby. Panchayat cannot do anything or make alternative use of that building if it is lying disused, or even repair it, and because the department people will come and any day they can say, "Ki why this is illegal, you are doing this." In Finance Commission and others will say, this has to be spent only on development. This you can't meet. Now you raise the question of this water supply. Right from day one it was known that this will be a when they prevailed upon 15th FC to tie up 30% grants for water supply and 30% for sanitation, their expectation was that the department will get this money. Out of 4.5 lakh crores that they were getting, this would be the easy way out. This money would come straight to drinking water, and through this they will pay off all the contractors. When we sort of issue here is that now this money has been, asset has been created, they created it, the contracts were awarded without involving the panchayats. That was done through the departments and now when this asset has to be handed over to the Gram Panchayats, a resolution of the Gram Sabha has to come, and then the entire responsibility will get transferred to the Panchayats. Now Panchayats are resisting this, ki look, how do I know that whether the work has been done is up to the standards or not? You have not taken us into, no one has come and even explained. And their district magistrates, collectors, they threaten the Gram Sabha, if you don't do this, we'll have you suspended, we'll have you sort of charge sheeted, we'll have an inquiry conducted, and people are being forced. So the writing is on the wall that once
in the north, you are still catching up on infrastructure gap. These problems we experienced in the late 90s and early 2000s, when those days it was the World Bank giving money for water supply. Same thing, it was centralized, the contracts were given, projects were completed, handed over to user groups, then user groups faded away. Because they lost interest in doing the unglamorous tasks of collecting, what is it called, tariffs. And then the whole thing was supposed to be handed over to the panchayats. Panchayats resisted, and the state government had to give a subvention, one-time subvention, repair it, and then hand it over. That's how we solved the problem. But there's a difference between the challenge that you face and the challenge that we face in the southern India. In places like, I have seen three at least, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, declining rural populations, and combined with the challenge shifting from infrastructure gaps to maintenance. Now there you find that I believe broadly that Kerala has solved some problems. Their maintenance systems are fabulous. Yes, because of the untied grants, their maintenance system is fabulous. They've also been able to scale up some of their problems in terms of handling certain maintenance tasks by selective centralization. For example, you're not, Kerala is squeaky clean now. By and large, you'll find no littering. The garbage is well managed, there's segregation everywhere, super impressive. And they've done it by the state government also taking on certain strategic responsibilities in terms of processing of waste, which is not scale efficient at the Gram Panchayat level. So there are some models there that can be looked at in terms of maintenance. As far as Karnataka is concerned, it's patchy. I would imagine that the coastal area is very much approximates Kerala. In the other sides, they still haven't really worked it out, but there are some interesting models that are emerging which can be transmitted through peer-to-peer. Tamil Nadu, very, very patchy. I mean, certain services well run, water supply is well run, garbage, they've lost it. They just don't know how to handle it. There's an explosion of paper and plastic garbage because of urbanization, but the panchayats do not have the ability to, so they just go and furtively dump it. And so the roadsides are just full of garbage. So there are things to be learned in terms of very tangible problems. What are the kind of tangible solutions that can be applied? And it will be useful to actually look at some of these. And I would therefore look at not merely water supply is of course there, but if it's water supply, liquid waste management and solid waste management, it becomes a very nice thing. And you will have to take a different approach with respect to the states in the south that have met the infrastructure gap, and the challenge is maintenance. And in the north you will have to face with these problems which we faced 20-25 years back.
To be state specific also.
Very state.
I have 3 points. One is, sir, I think Raghunandan sir, hard drive has a lot of data and wisdom. If this can be made public good, so I'm sure there are multiple websites, but some place where, because many things that we are discussing today have been discussed earlier, but they have lost, as probably this type of forums have lost its significance. So that's one point. The second, sir, I think we have, I think couple of colleagues have highlighted the need for strengthening the institutions which are supposed to build the capacity, the state level institutions. I think all across many of these institutions have innovated in a way, or they have they live in the past. So somewhere we need to unlock the synergies that already exist outside the government system, like academics, think tanks, and so forth. I think it is applicable both at the central government level. How do we bring capacities from outside to work with the government? So work in circumspect manner. So how do we bring them in? I think that.
Ask them how many consultants currently in UP? How many thousands?
Then, sir, I think we need to build capacity of the consultants also. Yes.
On consultants?
Sir, on the resources part, this is my third point. I think if you look at urban sector, in whole of South Asia, there have been a great success story around 20 or 30 years back. And I am very, very surprised that it has never built that scale. This is the Tamil Nadu urban infra. That's one part. The second part is if it can be turned into predictable fund flows, whether through finance commission or state finance commissions, or as a percentage of share of the buoyant revenues. I think it's, and if we can think of replicating, because urbanization I think is a critical issue, and as we get into that urban financing, how can we replicate the success stories that we have seen in Tamil Nadu? 3 points.
स्पेशली पंचायत में ओनरशिप को लेकर के, क्योंकि जनरली पंचायत के जो मेंबर्स हैं, सामान्य नागरिक का तो अभी उस तरह की ओनरशिप बन नहीं पा रही। गांव हमारा है, कभी होता था, पहले तो यही होता था ना कि गांव की अपनी एक अस्मिता होती थी, उसका एक अस्तित्व होता था, और गांव के नाम पर लोग कुर्बान हो जाते थे, जैसे कहते थे, उसका एक प्राउड होता था गांव को लेकर, एक ओनरशिप बनती थी जो सामाजिक स्तर पर जो सोसाइटी। पंचायत को लेकर के ओनरशिप का बहुत बड़ा गैप है। माना यही जाता है कि वो पंचायत के माध्यम से जो मेंबर्स हैं उनको मालिक के रूप में, गवर्नमेंट मीन्स वो उसकी ओनरशिप लेंगे, वो मालिक बनेंगे। कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग में ये पार्ट सबसे ज़्यादा गैप है, क्योंकि ठीक है वो उनको रूल बता दिए जाते हैं, लेकिन ओनरशिप अगर आगे सोचना होगा कि ओनरशिप कैसे पैदा की जा सकती है। 2-3 चीज़ें जो, क्योंकि वो लाभार्थी का भाव ज़्यादा है लोगों का, वो नागरिक का भाव कम, वहीं फिर आकर रुकते हैं, लाभार्थी का भाव ज़्यादा है। वो लाभार्थी से मालिक कैसे बनेंगे, कैसे अपने गांव के मालिक बन सकते हैं। हम लोग एक छोटा सा प्रयोग कर रहे हैं इसको लेकर, लेकिन अभी वो शुरू है, क्या उसका रिजल्ट निकलेगा वो तो अलग बात है, या क्या और लर्निंग आएगी। उत्तर प्रदेश में 15 ग्राम पंचायतों को लेकर के उनके वार्ड मेंबरों को फोकस करके, उनका एक वार्ड है, वार्ड वहाँ बहुत छोटा है, वार्ड लगभग 1000 की आबादी या औसत आबादी करीब 2200 वहाँ पंचायतों की बनती है। तो आप एवरेज मान लें 10 से 11 वार्ड बनते हैं, 11-12 वार्ड एक गांव में। और अगर 2000 की आबादी है तो 200 की आबादी पर, 2000 में अगर 10 वार्ड तो 200 की आबादी पर वो बन जाते हैं, अर्थात कुल मिला के 30, 40, 50 घरों को लेकर के एक वार्ड बनता है। ऐसे हम कुछ वार्ड मेंबरों को हम लोगों ने चिन्हित किया है, जिनको प्रशिक्षित किया था और जिनमें लीडरशिप क्वालिटी थोड़ा ठीक लगी है। उनसे ये कह रहे हैं कि अपने वार्ड की ओनरशिप लें, वहां से शुरू करें। अभी पंचायत को एक बार भूल जाए, अपने वार्ड को माने कि वहां से वो लीडर चुने गए हैं। तो उनको हम लोगों ने पहले ये किया कि एक उनको ट्रेनिंग दी और एक वातावरण बनाने की कोशिश की। अभी उनसे ये कहा कि एक फॉर्मेट बनाया गया कि अपने वार्ड का सर्वे करो कि क्या क्या चीजें सर्विसेज की दृष्टि से या लोगों की दृष्टि से क्या है। फिर फैमिली सर्वे करिए, खुद ही जा करके, खुद आप गांव में जाओ, लोगों के घर में जाओ और पूछो कि आपकी क्या है। तो बाकायदा उसका एक सिस्टमेटिक फॉर्मेट बना के दिया गया है। ऐसे अब सर्वे कंप्लीट हो गया है, सर्वे को उन्होंने कंपाइल किया। कंपाइल करने के बाद ये कहा गया कि अब उस सर्वे को लेकर लोगों के साथ बैठो। कोई जरूरी नहीं कि पूरा वार्ड एक साथ इकट्ठा होगा मतदाता, वहां आप ग्रुप बना के 2 ग्रुप 3 ग्रुप में बैठिए और उनके साथ डिस्कशन करिए कि देखिए जो आपके एरिया का सर्वे निकल के आया कि ये प्रॉब्लम्स आ रही हैं, ये समस्या है, खुद आप उसी सर्वे से ही निकल के आ रहा। फिर कहा कि उसको कैटेगराइज करो कि पहले समाधान भी उन्हीं से पूछिए, वही बताएं कि ये समस्या है तो इसका समाधान क्या होगा। समाधान और समस्या निकाल उसको कैटेगराइज करिए। कैटेगराइज इस आधार पर करिए कि कौन से ऐसे प्रॉब्लम्स हैं जिनका समाधान वो खुद कर सकते हैं, जिसके लिए किसी से, जिसको कहा गया बिना लागत वाला एक शब्द दिया, लेकिन उनको सीधे कहा जा रहा है कि आप खुद कर सकते हो। दूसरा ये कि अगर थोड़ी सी सीड मनी मिल जाए आपको तो आप उसको उस काम को, क्योंकि वहां होता है कि मंदिर बनता है तो पता चला या कुछ इस तरह का, किसी ने 2000 रुपया 5000 रुपया शुरू में दे दिया, उसने 2 लेबल लगाया और ईंटा इकट्ठा कर लिया तो फंड आने शुरू हो जाते हैं वहां पर, वो 5000 सीड मनी बन जाती है। तो ऐसे गांव के जीवन में खूब होता है। तो वो एक सीड मनी टाइप कितने काम होंगे, सीड मनी मिल जाए। दूसरा कि स्कीम से जुड़ी हुई कितनी प्रॉब्लम्स है, जो जितनी स्कीम सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट की, और थर्ड ये कि कौन से बड़े काम है जिसको जीपीडीपी में आप डाल सकते हो। तो जस्ट ये एक्सपेरिमेंट शुरू हुआ है अभी, और मुश्किल से अभी 3-4 महीने से पहले अभी सर्वे ही कंप्लीट हुआ है। फिर देखते हैं अगले कि 1 साल में क्या निकल करके आता है। और सबसे पहले यही है कि अब आगे वो बिना लागत वाले कामों में कैसे गांव जुटता है। एक बार फिर वो श्रमदान या शैक्षिक कार्य शुरू हो तो शायद ओनरशिप पैदा होना शुरू, क्योंकि इन सब में समस्याओं को पहचानना, उसके बारे में निर्णय लेना और फिर उसको एक्शन में कन्वर्ट करना, तो ये प्रोसेस ही ओनरशिप पैदा करता है। तो एक बड़े हल्के से सरल तरीके से इसको करने की कोशिश की जा रही है कि अगर कुछ निकलेगा तो शायद एक रास्ता इससे बन सकता है, और ये अलग रिसर्च का विषय बन सकता है।
Anand, you have spoken.
I know, apologies for this. Sunilji at the outset, he told me, and you notice there is a rural word that entered into the discourse. So we work only in the urban. So Sunilji had promised that there's going to be another session where there's going to be urban and metropolitan. So I'll reserve my, even in the interest of time, just the one thing which probably is of relevance, which we are trying in urban and which may have significance in rural. In the peri-urban areas and things that are getting notified from towns to cities, in Odisha we have come up with a transition policies that sets a duration of 3 years over which it will transition into an urban. So there are eligibility criteria, and then those eligibility criteria are converted to performance criteria, so that after 3 years you are fully formally urban. However, the government just before this election again bypassed this policy, its own policy, and pre-notified some 22 other towns, but these are attempts. The other things that we are also seeing in Odisha is under a Jaga mission, the Slum Dwellers Association, जैसे आपने कहा, वो खुद अपना जो assets हैं वो करते हैं, उसका निरीक्षण और उसका सुपरविजन, और सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप्स हैं. So they are able to do this, reduces a little bit of burden. The overall intention is to avoid the contractor nexus, the councillor contractor nexus, but in a way building the capacities of the slum dwellers in this. The urban story for, we're doing some cadre and recruitment rules revisions as well, questioning the sanction position as well as creating new cadres. But the entire other story that I'm hearing, I thought the ward committees and the elections of councils in cities was a tragic area. Today I'm getting even more shocking descriptions from all of you of the rural areas, but probably some of that urban lessons in the next session, please. Yeah.
Very good examples. One is decentralized collection of the histories of panchayats. There have been experiments in Karnataka where school teachers have gone to the children and given them a project of identifying the Veerakallus. Veerakallus are stones, commemorative stones, to commemorate the people who have died in battle. And so they go and they check these and they note it down. Number two, and this was a very interesting project done by two fabulous teachers, primary school teachers, is to ask the children to go back to their grandparents and collect information on what the grandparent remembers on Independence Day 1947. This was done about 15-20 years back, and that was made into a beautiful film actually, and then used to train panchayats to gain that the ownership. Now, this is years back. Now I find that there are panchayat level Facebook pages where they get in touch. But they speak about local festivals, local cultures, they interview people who have made it big in their minds from the panchayats, and there's a community feeling. However, there's one problem, that is this: when the state governments do these unilateral decisions of merging panchayats into urban areas, they destroy identities. I mean, the best panchayat in Karnataka, in my time when I was Rural Development Secretary, was a panchayat called Bellandur. It was televised, it used to televise its live panchayat meetings to the Gram Sabhas. And they had online voting. This was done by a software engineer who was staying in that panchayat, and that panchayat filed a case against the city corporation for defiling its lake. That the best panchayat of Bangalore, of Karnataka actually, it even desktop computers to poor panchayats with the revenue that they earned. They're paying property taxes, everything. That is today the worst ward of Bangalore, because the 16-member panchayat was destroyed, and they made it one ward of Bellandur. It's a place where the lake catches fire. Okay. That was once upon a time the best panchayat. So this is the problem. When you convert panchayats into group panchayats, you destroy village identities. You have to be.
So just one point. This is regarding property tax. Now, just to put it on record, under this Swamitwa scheme, where they are undertaking mapping, drone mapping of the Abadi areas, and just by having these accurate maps of plus minus 5 centimeter becoming available of the houses, plot size as well as constructed building size. In Maharashtra, here Settlement Commissioner, he had done the study in Pune district alone. They found that the property tax which they were collecting, just by having these proper records, it went up by 15 to 20%, without revising anything. And here the demand for having the Gauthan area, because right now it is restricted to Gauthan area. Development takes place outside Gauthan area. Generated. This has immense sort of potential for making the whole property tax collection more transparent and sort of accurate, and the credibility that this data enjoys with the people as on date, that is something which is amazing. So this is Maharashtra was the pioneering state for Swamitwa. They had sort of entered into MOU with Survey of India before Government of India launched it. But this data has immense potential. It should not be left just to Revenue Department or alone.
We had a similar thing in Karnataka. Now they are raising around 1,000 crore by way of panchayat level property taxes, 1,000 crore. And that has been done by overcoming a legal impediment, because you had the Gram Thana area, which is non-agricultural land, and you had houses being built on what is known as revenue land, that is agricultural land. So the people who are building houses in agricultural land were claiming that they cannot be taxed because they are primarily illegal houses. So the High Court of, which is really funny because they use but the High Court of Karnataka gave a very pragmatic decision that illegality or otherwise of a building can be judged separately, but as long as it's a structure as defined under the Panchayat Raj Act, they have to pay taxes.
And
so,
outside the village.
Yeah, so therefore what has happened is that the number of properties in Karnataka increased by 30%, and without increasing the per square foot property tax rate, the tax is increased. And the other thing is that big industrial units, including Bangalore Airport, which is actually within the area of 18 panchayats, have gone to court and their cases have been thrown out. So the Bangalore Airport today pays taxes. And I know of the case where a senior government officer called the panchayat presidents of the 18 panchayats and threatened them, saying that you shall not tax Bangalore Airport, and the panchayat presidents told him, just take a walk, and taxed him.
CSR, we are perfectly fine. We have
Mr. Venkaiah Naidu was the minister, I think 2000 to 2002, around that area, saying that CSR funds can be... No, not compulsory. No, saying that panchayats can obtain funds from corporates.
Now you have to re-examine it in the context of the new CSR.
That I don't know.
The new CSR cannot be given to panchayats.
Cannot be.
Is it so?
It is cannot.
Cannot.
It is cannot.
Cannot.
But it can be given to state governments.
Yes.
That is only for specific purposes.
We should look
I
at it.
didn't know.
This is a gray area because
Let me invite Dr. Ranini for his valedictory remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Vijay Kelkar, and towards the end of this session, let me warmly welcome you to, because Gokhale Institute, lunch of course shortly, but also the fact that Gokhale Institute is very happy and privileged to host this discussion along with Pune International Center. I think we had an extremely high quality discussion. I'm delighted that Mr. Raghunandan is also here because he's an old friend and he always inspires and triggers lots of emotions and thoughts. I'm very happy to hear about the Bangalore International Airport because my favorite quote is about a little known village in Maharashtra called Dabhol, which was so excited that a huge project was coming in its presence called Enron. And in their naivety and innocence, they decided to build a little hospital and school with some 0.3 decimal % property tax. And the case went all the way up to the Supreme Court. They were thrown out. Not only was a government officer who threatened them and that you can't impose, they pursued the case, but it was finally thrown out. So it was a rude shock to them, but I'm happy that things have come after 30 years. Things have come to a pass where 12 panchayats are able to successfully impose a property tax on a large project. So this is a very heartening development. I don't have too many things to say because I think the discussion has been extremely high quality and I hope the transcripts and the notes will capture that. And of course, thanks to Mr. Sunil Kumar and Madam Jyotika for trigger. I think this is what your paper started this, and I'm quite confident that we'll take it into a very well-defined research program and activities. Just a couple of points to make. It came out in आपके comment में आया, Mr. Pran. I was going to make that point first. This still that language of, and Madam, you also use that word, so I want to point it out. This labharthi and beneficiaries. We still talk about beneficiaries. The language and discourse is in terms of beneficiaries. So until we get rid of the language, language has a huge influence on the way we think and plan. So it's not beneficiaries and citizens unless empowerment comes from language and how we describe. Even we are in the middle of election season, it's still the language is the labharthis, labharthis, labharthis. And sorry, I'll just take a minute. I'm told this story is a little apocryphal, but worth relating, that after independence, Mr. Nehru told his party workers actually to go to the length and breadth of the country and tell the people, especially in rural areas, that we were free now. I mean, hum log azad hain. So apparently the common refrain, the response used to be, he used to say, we are free now, and the Britishers have left. So the refrain used to be, acha, Britishers have gone. Who's going to rule us now? so this ingrained, deeply ingrained Labharthi thing. And some of the videos we have been saying, sorry to name the institute, but I have to name it because it's a meme. These Galgotia University students, these are the highly educated, college educated children or kids or students. So ये लाभार्थी का इतना, it's probably very deep in our psyche that we just absorb and nothing. So the empowerment has to start with the discourse of their citizens, and therefore empowerment. That's the first point. So I hope our reports and research will emphasize this point, that this language of Labharthi has to be displaced with citizenship. The second point is, I want to react to Mr. Pradeep Apte, my favorite person. He said that MPs act like a corporate. He said that most of the member of parliament is supposed to sit in parliament and worry about legislations and lawmaking and policy making, and so also perhaps the MLAs. But indeed, de facto, they are mostly acting like a corporator and only catering to daily complaints and representations. So I think what I want to react to him is by saying that we cannot take this as a given. So I think your point you made was that this is a fact, and therefore, but I think this is a fact that we should not accept, in the sense that there is so much premium to this power. I mean, I think you mentioned that this MP lads and or maybe it came out in some other comments that MP lads, MLA lads has come out because after all they are supposed to. But I think we cannot take this as a given. So I just want to submit that this Marathi मध्ये म्हणतात सत्तेचे राजकारण. The premium on power has been continuously increasing. So by hook or crook, we have to get to a position of becoming an MLA or an MP, and the premium keeps increasing. So therefore, automatically the corporator is completely undermined. What to speak of the panchayat members. So, but we cannot take this as a given, that since this is a fact, let's now address this fact. I think we have to spend some effort in basically changing this fact. And of course, this is a very much longer and more grand and ambitious program, that how to reduce the premium on power. But this whole exercise of democratic decentralization is about reducing the premium on power in various levels of government. So this is very important and a very indispensable part, that when can we have a situation where becoming an MP is somewhat boring? I mean, we can at least dream of that. Again, my favorite example is to say that in the last 20 years, there has been an example of a country which did not have a government for 2 years. And during that period, GDP grew faster, exports grew, and the unemployment situation was lower. And this country is not Afghanistan, which was ruled by a US administrator. This country is Belgium. So it is another of Paul Krugman's favorite quote is that when can we make banking boring after the Lehman crisis? So similarly, this reducing the premium on power, this is also should be a part of our grand ambition, that yeah, so this is a point I want to make. The third point is about what Mr. Raghunandan said, that you said that three things have happened: the tendency towards more centralization and authoritarian regimes. Secondly, the widespread externalities, and third is the development of technology or the evolution of technology, which is making it possible directly to through DBTs. Now, I think something like 450 programs of the central government are directly reaching out to thanks to technology and the jam trinity. And you said these are the three reasons why it's becoming this is becoming the discussion of democratic decentralization is going out of fashion. So I think I'm not so sure that this was not anticipated. Maybe the first one, maybe the first one, that the authoritarian tendencies, but certainly the widespread externalities, now you're talking that it manifests in terms of climate change or the evolution of technology, surely that was not unanticipated. So I refuse to accept your point that in light of this, therefore, no, this is, let's forget about. Yeah, it's an observation, but we can. To me, it's not a constraint. I think this is something which was to be expected, and therefore it has happened. And but it is true that this DBT and this Labharthi language is completely undermining so many things. You mentioned the insurance. By the way, I sit on the other side on the insurance. So I was party to the IRDA doing all these crazy things, but I don't know whether to plead guilty or not. But things like even Ayushman Bharat or even the Jal Har Ghar Pe Jal. This is all basically, the more centralization is undermining, and these are all state subjects actually, if not local government subjects. So so these are all things which we have to take head on. And last point is, our friend Mr. Saharia has been also campaigning for this association of local governments. There is no forum for them to exchange best practices, have a forum for discussion, have learning, maybe at least, if not twice a year, at least once a year. And it doesn't have to be all India level. It can be at the level of even the state level, association of local governments, an association, a forum. So that is something I think we can advocate. And I think somebody made a mention that these things do exist. But I believe there are two or three of them in parallel. And therefore it's again, it's sort of, it's not, it's a kind of, it's like having three chambers of commerce. And so that it should have one, at least the state level. So I think that would be a good suggestion. Thank you.
Well, before we go for lunch, I want to first thank each one of you for coming and really giving outstanding suggestions. I have taken notes, and I'm sure my colleagues will have taken notes, so we'll probably work out based on this some kind of regional research program which we can do over the next 3 years. This is what idea is to work out for the next 3 years. And fortunately, we have both Sunil and Jyotika with us, so I'm not worried about getting this reasonable research program out of this meeting. I think to start with, perhaps one of the recommendations should be this abolish MP-led schemes. You know the history of MP-led scheme, if you remember. It was designed by the great Chanakya called P.V. Narasimha Rao to maintain his majority. Because essentially it was done by him. And I remember I was in Finance Secretary, that was which proposed to the Prime Minister that let's abolish this. And but that was also coalition government, so they couldn't do it. So I think essentially started first as a survival kit for the government, but it really now ballooned into Frankenstein threatening actually what it was supposed to do, namely prepare legislation and work as a legislative body. So that would be a good idea, and they be emulated by M&A schemes and now, so it's so
yeah, also endorsed by the Supreme Court. The MP-led scheme, there was a common cause PIL, and it's a terrible judgment, but it was endorsed by the Supreme Court in 2000.
we can go to procurative judgment. We can go back to them. No, what I said, we have to make it.
During COVID, it was suspended.
Yeah.
And we can actually look at the role that the panchayat. So that could be also.
Yes, at the beginning was the argument made, yeah.
I think best is if they keep it at the present levels. So much of other money.
No, once it comes, it goes on increasing, like there's temptation.
The government, I don't think, has at one point decreased it. And
They made it into that other Yojana. They made it
by crores. But I think
even earlier, the MP-led money was granted by the collector, at least in Maharashtra, I know. And it was to be only on those heads which were declared to be a plan expenditure available for that district.
correct. But the question is, to what extent, so the collectors used it as a way to claw into the domain of the Gram Panchayats. And it became like a sludge fund.
exactly. So it is anyway.
There is another scheme, and that's where the narrative is very important. For example, Sansad Adarsh Gram Yojana. You see, this was the first thing that was announced from the ramparts of Red Fort. You see, what has Sansad got to do with Adarsh?
Exactly. No, I didn't.
And this is, actually this government wants to reduce MP land. And there have been proposals within this government to, junk it. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to do because of the other pressures. But sir, the whole idea of MPs taking responsibility and MPs getting ranked on this basis.
Correct.
This whole scheme is now a non-starter. Matlab, Sansad Adarsh Gram Yojana has
Nee.
now been given a burial.
No, burial,
for all
and
practical
not a single meeting, sir. The first meeting happened. After that, 2016, there has not been any meeting till now.
So anyway, I think let's see, if we're bold enough, if Sunil and Jyoti are bold enough, we can suggest that also, the policy scheme. But I want to thank you all, and our next would be, when Anil is available, your colleague is available, we could organize our second roundtable on urban areas, because they were probably a little more different than what was discussed today. And we'll include both urban and metro regions together, so the one single conference. You want to say something?
We did actually, Janagra and we at TRI, we did it supported by the Gates Foundation, 2 convenings, roundtables. Around one was rural governance, other was urban governance.
Oh, please send it.
Share with you the
Please,
proceedings and
yeah.
the people there. So rural governance was done by us and
Yeah, that will be useful.
So we'll share that, sir.
Great. You know, as Sumit pointed out, these are very difficult to take any money from foundations. That's why PIC was started an independent foundation. It's only by members and local. So that we don't get this kind of, it's so intrusive that FCRA now, very intrusive instrument this government is using. Anyway, that's a different story. Thank you all.